So Hiten, this was a very strange intro to yourself. Do you want to give like an actual introduction to yourself
Yeah,
to the people
absolutely.
that don't know you?
Yeah, for sure. I've been in tech for a very long time, for about 18 years, um, and I've invested in like 1,000 startups, literally, at this point throughout that time, and advised a bunch of companies. I used to meet with one new founder that I didn't know before, like every day of the week, and I did that for many years. And that's how I got to know a lot of people. And at this point, I have my own startup that's not in Web3 at the moment and probably won't be for a while, if ever. And it's an enterprise B2B company in the cybersecurity space. And we've raised money for it and stuff like that. But I also have multiple self funded businesses, or bootstrap is what most people call it. I don't like calling it bootstrapped, I like calling it self funded. And now with crypto and NFTs and DeFi, I put it in the fun and profit category for me in terms of I do it for fun and profit because I think it's one of the most, if not the most, interesting category in the world today in terms of what's happening, pace of change, how much opportunity there's going to be in the future just based on what we learn and discover and build right now. And at the end of the day, I really, really care about business and growth, growing businesses, and building really great products and services.
Yeah, Hiten is actually our biggest holder. So if anyone wants to make a wall in Llamaverse, that's Hiten. So blame him.
And he is a Kongz holder, so definitely blame him.
And you're oh my god,
I
you just
don't
discovered the
have
plot.
I don't
You just
have a
discovered the
Genesis
plot.
Kong. I don't have a Genesis Kong. I bought a bunch of them because their game was super hyped up, and some of my acquaintances in the space were like, really bullish on it. And I have played the game, and I'm ready to sell all my Kongs now.
It's so fucking funny. Hiten has so much conviction on selling that. Those
Wait,
guns.
what game is it? The sandbox one or the new one that just came out?
The little GameFi thing they did.
Yeah, there wasn't too much on that, to be honest. It seemed like a substitute for what they're really trying to build. Like here, you can have this until the real product's out. You know.
When I compare it to like Bloodshed Bears, which is probably the closest comparison, or even Creeps, or even some of the last year's like Wolf Game and Fox this and that and the others, it's like kind of a meaningless game, frankly. And it's not like completely poorly done, but it doesn't matter. Like it would have been great if they launched it back then, when the stuff wasn't as mature and people hadn't already built a bunch of stuff. But the mechanics there, what's happening, how they do it, there's nothing unique or original about it, and it's just yet another GameFi thing. I feel like it doesn't matter at all. It's insignificant. I don't even understand what the value is of playing that game at this point. And I'm in a bunch of other games too, so I have a one-to-one comparison. It almost feels like, and this I see this a lot in the space, people are building without awareness or understanding of what other people have built. And the reason that matters is not because I never believe your competition matters because you're competing with them. What I believe is your competition matters because of what the customer, the consumer, in this case, all of us holders, the community thinks about that competitor. So I never look at it like, oh, that competitor is better or worse. I look at it more like, what does the people that matter, what do they think? And those people are us, the holders and the community. And it feels like a lot of these collections and projects don't really have good awareness of their communities and what their communities are experiencing. And thus they build poor experiences for their holders. And that's what I think the Kong's game is. I think it's a poor experience. It's just not interesting. It's okay. It's not like built wrongly. Also, they have a polygon bridge and stuff like that that makes things overly complex. Um, I know you folks over here at Llamaverse, we have like a lot of the spit token and all that stuff is built on Polygon, but like it's transparent. Like it's not. It's sorry. It's like it doesn't impact me when I do things today. I don't have to bridge. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it at the moment, at least. And the way that the Kongs have it set up is like that you have to bridge from ETH to Polygon for just about everything, from what I can tell. And so I've had to bridge 3 times for 3 different things in their collection. So again, I just think that we're coming to a place now where you can't get away with some of these things and expect people to actually use the experience that you've created in an effective way if you don't think through the user experience. This wasn't the case before because there was a lot of land grab stuff going on, but now I think the polish, the ability to like remove friction, the product skills, the design skills, those are becoming more and more important. But even if you thought about it for a second, you'd realize that like you'd do whatever you could not to create this friction where you have to bridge from ETH to Polygon the way that they've done. There's a better way to do it. I don't know that way. I didn't build that product, but like I'm 100% sure there's a better way. And I'm also 100% sure that Llamaverse will figure that way out. And that's what excites me because it's really about what projects, what founders, what teams are able to build the right experiences for people. And we're basically in a spot now where like everyone has to have higher standards, including all of us in the communities. And this isn't like I'm like, you know, like mad at anyone. It's just like people need to do better if they want their collections to succeed, if they want to be, you know, part of the community at large. And that's kind of what Web3 is about, is like, you know, all this WAGMI and GM and GN and all that. I like it. It makes sense. It points to the ethos of the space. Whether some people abuse it or overuse it or whatever, cool. But at the end of the day, we are one community entirely. And that's, I think, the real ethos here. Sure, there's scammers and grifters and all these other things. But again, the reason there's those things is because there's a lot of financial incentive. The reason we know that these people are like that is because of all the transparency between Twitter and the blockchain that like makes all of this really easy to investigate and determine who's doing what. It's kind of fun if you ask me from a drama standpoint, because there's consistent drama all the time because of this stuff. But at some point, people have to start maturing and realizing that like they can't do shady shit and get away with it.
There's a lot of shady shit going on. Even if people like, I think a lot of people do stuff and then don't realize that everything is public. Like recently, like on a stream, Farco was we typically don't get named, but was publicly telling people to buy a collection, literally while at the same time listing it.
Wait, are you talking about Farouk?
Oh yeah. Farouk.
Okay, cool. Just checking.
And like simultaneously, as he's telling people to buy this collection, people are looking at the collection and he's listing them live on the podcast as he's saying, buy this collection. So it's like, I don't understand what people are doing, because it's like everything is publicly out there.
So funny.
And he hasn't done that once. He's done it like more than once, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times, and now he's like caught. And he's not just caught. He's like, now he's that guy. And I see a lot of people calling him a grifter and things like that. And it's like, if he truly is a good guy, then why would he do this? Because he's basically making his Twitter following and his audience exit liquidity, right? That's what we call it. And that's not a good actor, because that's someone just looking out for themselves and trying to make a buck, doesn't care about anyone else. And this is why we have like a big reputation issue in the space in general, not individuals, but NFTs as a whole. Like, even if I go to like tech people I know and I start talking to them about it, they bring up all these kinds of things, not like specifically about Farouk or anybody in particular, because they don't know, they're not in the space. But it's really hard to defend the space when you have people like this running around that are pretty popular and you know, get a following because of the things that they are tweeting or what their kind of appearance is in the front, when in the back, like, they're completely like, you know.
Yeah, it's two sides. It's completely two sides.
Exactly. And I'm just happy that there's transparency. Even if these people aren't transparent, you can kind of do the digging. I mean, I think that's what makes this space special, because all these kinds of things would happen in startups at a much slower pace, and it'd be very hard to capture what's happening. And so that inside job is now not an inside job anymore, and it's very transparent. And yes, you could still hide and do stuff, but like, it's almost like, if you're gonna do this kind of stuff, hide it better, please. Like, just hide it better.
Yeah.
Like, Like we don't need this drama. Just hide it better. Like so it's not that like I think I'm like high and mighty and that no one is gonna do this stuff. No, people are gonna do this stuff. I get it. But like if someone like him does it and gets caught and isn't hiding it, does that mean that people think it's okay?
Oh, it was
Does that mean he thinks
got
he didn't do
torn
anything
into.
wrong?
He got torn into this time. Pretty bad.
Yeah, and I'm
And then
yeah,
what?
and
They're gonna forget by next time.
Probably, yeah.
Uh,
I mean, look at Fleur.
yeah.
well, I don't forget
Oh,
anything.
Fleur has lost all credibility. I'm sorry.
Yeah. There's not a single time that Fleur comes up that I've seen that someone doesn't add a caveat right away.
But the thing with
At this
Fleur
point.
is, though, that I'm trying to get at is he's still operating somehow.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But that's there are always going to be like-minded people. Always. That's the truth. And it's because there's so much money involved. So much money. So this is not going to stop. I don't see an end to it. That's what I'm saying. If you're going to do it, just hide it better. Hide it better. Like otherwise you're just an idiot because you're going to get caught at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's dumb.
It's just very lazy, to be honest. Especially when you have your entire business and credibility is surrounded around having a podcast. Like, for the most part, right?
Bro, he's doing it live with the podcast with his fancy ass tick on his fucking fancy ass name on just like get a spare wallet. Like don't be dumb.
So much of this makes no sense to me, frankly. Like, but at the same time, I truly believe some people don't think they're doing anything wrong.
Yeah, it happens
Well,
too often, though. Like, it's so often that, like, these little minor things go past and, like, people don't say anything. It's very odd.
That's why I like people like CoffeeZilla. If you guys know
I
him.
watch CoffeeZilla a lot.
Do you watch
Yeah,
CoffeeZilla? Do you know
love him.
Do you know
People
him?
love
Yeah,
him. Yeah,
he's good. He is good. I like him.
people love him.
I'm waiting for the day I'm on CoffeeZilla for like a good thing, you know, when someone calls something out. Because it will happen eventually. It's dumb though. Like I was expecting to actually like have to DM him about Pixelmon if it got bad, because you know.
But somebody else did, right?
Um. I don't know. I was gonna give him like what I knew, like my side of things. But yeah.
I think it's fascinating that we get to or have to police other people at this point, and that we have police like CoffeeZilla and folks like that, because that's the police to me. It's the cops. You know, like that's what we all have to turn into. It sucks. You know, it really sucks.
Our savior,
Fuck NFT ethics. NFT ethics are like B tier compared to like coffee. Coffee like is heavy research. NFT ethics kind of like pick apart some things, but then they make some stupid claims sometimes. You know, like there's so many times where they just make questionable claims.
You know what I like about NFT ethics, though? Instead of being like CoffeeZilla and calling something after it happened, they call it out before it happened. So they try to save people before it hurts, you know, which is what really matters.
Both are valuable in a sense because CoffeeZilla has like a wider
They
audience.
both are,
So.
yeah. But if we can
If
stop
you
it
look
before
at-
that happen, it's even better.
If you look at some of this, though, I'm not going to name any accounts, but if you look at some of this and look at exactly what they're sharing and when they share it, there's some major ulterior motives, and some of these accounts also go after things that are almost like, hey, look over there, don't look over here. And I see a lot of that because, you know, I'm pretty tapped into a bunch of different groups of all different kinds in this space, and like I don't know how ethical some of those supposedly ethical Twitter accounts are when you look at what the history is of what they've shared and then where they try to deflect your attention. Just something to keep in mind that I think I wouldn't trust anybody at this point. And I don't mean to say that like I don't trust anybody. I mean to say that these accounts are also self-serving. And we should just be aware of that when we see what they're doing and even question them. Because the second that we stop questioning them, like we have a bigger problem. So I appreciate that they exist, but I've seen some things and heard some things that give me a lot of pause on pretty much all those accounts one way or another. Because the human desire to make money and the human desire for that selfishness, whether people know it or not, is pretty strong, especially in this space, because the whole financial incentive is the underlying thing. And I think that makes this a very interesting space, a very interesting time. Um, it's insane because like when I was everyone here's age probably, I'm 40. Um, the kind of opportunities I went after were very similar in the sense of I was looking for ways to understand the world, make money, and things like that. So I would be like probably wrecking shop right now in this space if I were like all of you folks, just like many of you are. Um, but it's incredible at how quickly you can make money. It's incredible at how you don't need to talk to anyone or be responsible for managing anyone or anything like that and make like way more than you could at any salaried job at this age. Even if you start from like a very low amount of cash, you can grow that with a lot. It takes discipline. I don't know if it takes luck, but it probably does. But it takes a lot of discipline, but you can do it. And I think that's amazing. But I think that the side effects are what we're seeing. But we haven't, in a way, I almost feel like we haven't seen anything yet in terms of some of the cash grabs that we might see in the future. This is just my gut feeling. It hasn't gotten better. It's gotten not worse, but there's been more and more things. Pixelmon's one, those mecha whatever they were called back last year. And right now with the size of our space here, like it's super easy for one project to suck the liquidity out of the market. And that to me is like I think a more underlying problem. There are projects that will just take a bunch of liquidity out of the market because of the way that they did things. Like those mecha folks last year, uh, they they locked people's ETH as part of their process, and I think it was like I think it was like $100 million. I might be wrong. It might be a lot less, but we were stalled for a while. In fact, I think the Pixelmon thing recently stalled us for a while too, because all of a sudden liquidity's tied up, and then if if the collection tanks, then what happens? People are stuck holding a bag, and a lot of people didn't get out, and now they lost money.
I agree with that 100%. I think like things like Pixelmon. I had a conversation with somebody about this whole thing. Like, this is just adding on to your point about how like it's completely a liquidity drain. I had a conversation about like market volume overall compared to like a mint like Pixelmon, which is probably one of the biggest we've ever seen. Which don't quote me on that because there may have been one that was bigger, but Pixelmon is definitely up there. But even at like that, Pixelmon's mint doesn't even come close to the volume of like a single day of bull run. So like, does it actually suck liquidity out completely?
It does because people lose money.
Yeah.
So what happens is people lose money, and volume is I appreciate your comparison. It makes sense, but volume on a daily basis across OpenSea can be pretty wide in terms of what people are buying. They're not all buying a certain type of collection or a certain thing. They're buying across the whole site. So I think that definitely um, changes the kind of perspective and the way to think about it. But basically, if it's $70 million put in, and then the floor drops, then that value goes from 70 to 10, or 70 to 20, or 70 to 30, or whatever the number is. So the difference there is the problem because it sucked all that money out of the market with no like appreciation on it. So you're literally saying that money's basically gone. It's burned. Where'd it go? It went in one person's pocket or a set or a group's pocket that basically did the project. And if they don't put the money back into the system, whatever that means, then we're basically looking at that money being sucked out of the market. That's the way I think about it. It's not just that the money got taken; it's that the people who got in those collections and lost money no longer have that money. So then they are not trading with that money.
I agree with you 100%. I was just seeing your perspective on it.
Yeah, that's the way I think about it. I think the point you make is good though, like that daily volume and it not being, it being some fraction of it. That makes sense. I just worry about us. Like, it's almost like there's so much short-term exuberance about some of these projects with the hype that people obviously, I mean, again, I'm preaching to the choir. I know you folks kind of know this, but like people just don't do their research. And this is also why Gary Vee and others, Gary Vee in particular, is always like, oh, do your hundreds of hours of research, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I get why he says it and he's been saying it, but he's definitely slowed down from saying some of that. But at the end of the day, like even 100 hours of research won't necessarily save you. And you usually don't have any time for that. So then it's like, oh, so if you're a long holder and you want to hold projects for a long time, sure, that strategy works. But what if you're looking to trade? What do you do? And again, this is where Llamaverse, the community here, Llama, and the approach I think is the healthiest approach in the space out of any of these alpha groups or communities out there because we are learning how to trade and we're learning how to trade properly in this community. And we're learning how to trade from Llama's vision and his way of thinking about it originally. And I was here very early, pre-Discord, watching him on Twitter and all that. And I'm also, originally an online marketer, and I believe he is as well. And so I just understood what he was doing. And then he kept saying how he really cared about people making money, and he really cared about the community. And when he did some things back in the day, like tried to pull the Wall Street bets, but for NFTs, it was a run. It was interesting. Some people got burned too, but he came out and admitted it, and said, "Hey, we're switching things up. Like this is not going to work. This is not sustainable." Blah blah blah. It was a lot of fun times, like that wine collection and a bunch of others. But like he learned his lesson, and I'm not seeing any of those things anymore. And I'm seeing a very like straightforward approach to being a true trader, just like there are stock traders, right? So I think I really appreciate that style, but that style is literally non-existent in any other space I see. And whenever I go look and see that somebody said something interesting about trading, I can trace it back, whether they copied or not, doesn't matter, or were inspired. I can trace it back to something I learned from Llama through the early days. Whether it's the strategies of when to buy, when to sell, when to hold, and things like that, or just the way to think about the graphs, the market, and the data, and things like that. So, it's this that we need more of. We need more people getting educated on how to be good traders in the space and even contributors to the community, because I think that's how we're going to grow. Again, I know that was a big ad for Llamaverse, but like, I just want people to kind of understand like the difference, because there are a lot of alpha groups, there are a lot of communities out there, and this one's very special to me in the space, in my opinion, because of the focus and the commitment to like being a good project, good partner, good set of contributors in this space. And like this also goes back to my comments earlier about a bunch of other collections. Like if you want to survive and thrive in this space as a collection, you kind of go one of two ways. But one of them, I think we're gonna see people do more and more. One way is like you just build and you just focus on yourself and your collection, your project, and your community. I respect that. That makes a lot of sense. If you have a collection, project, idea, whatever, where you can grow in that way. The second is you're a very good partner. You're partner centric, so to speak, or you're community centric, whatever you want to call it, where you're really focused on making sure that when you do partnerships or when you do collaborations with other projects, you're doing it in a way that everyone's incentives are aligned and there's a lot of clarity. And one thing related to that that I've seen that also disappoints me. We should probably talk about some of the more positive stuff at some point, but I do want to share this one thing that like really like I don't know. I've been getting more upset lately at certain things, and I do my best not to. But I've heard too many times when somebody decides to help a project out, whether they're an advisor or more formally involved, and they just basically get their money from a mint and then they're out and they don't help anymore, even though they were committed to helping after that. A lot of this has to do with founders and the structure they set up with people that can help them and all that. I get that. But some of it is just like there are a number of people that I would never recommend any collection to work with because of the behavior I've heard about them. And again, I don't want to be a cop. I know there's a bunch of, Twitter accounts that we just talked about that are policing things, but like shit, like someone needs to do it. We all kind of need to do it because the standards have to just be raised on what we're willing to accept.
There's a lot of bullshit people that I saw a tweet today or yesterday actually. It was basically said motherfucker. They don't say motherfuckers, but I'm adding motherfuckers because I don't care. But saying motherfuckers buy a mutant ape, stick it on their profile picture, and then become advisors.
Oh yeah,
It's so true. And it's so true. Just like people that like, I just see like, okay, I'm gonna just call them out. But like Ash Robin who tried to launch his like Ash Pass or something.
yes,
Like it was something absurd. Like it was 0.33 mint, and there's like every year you had to like resubscribe or some shit. And it was
yes,
like obviously clear that I've spoken like he came up in the space through CryptoBats, the Ozzy Osbourne's obviously
Yep.
Project.
Yep.
He was a community manager. Like
Oh.
he wasn't running shit. He was just a community manager. He then included his own username in some giveaways, grew a following, then people just, I don't know why, they just started following him, like liking his shit. So I don't get how you go from a community manager to an experienced trader who's creating an alpha group that is, $1,000, $2,000. Not really, but it's like what is 0.3? It's 0.33, and end of the day, you're gonna walk away fucking, a shit ton of money. And he like, where did his money go? He bought an ape from his crypto bots, obviously money, I guess. And then he's now starting a new one, and Obama called him out, people called him out, and then he backtracked. So credit to him, but it's not like he wanted to,
So
he had to kind of return the money. So
he didn't end up full rugging.
he returned the money.
Okay.
Can't make. He's a YouTuber or some shit. Everyone knows him. So, good that we kind of policed him because he deserves that shit. I've had some interactions with him and the CryptoBats team that weren't good at all. Like that was a nightmare to work with them. They just much rugged full of spots. Like they gave an allocation of spots to whitelist spots or CryptoBats ages ago to a bunch of communities. They then provided us with a announcement that they asked us to make about like information how to mint and stuff. And then the day after, it was obviously two per mint. They gave us and some other groups, and then they let us announce it. And then the day after, they come and they're like, "Hey, so we're gonna do one," and I'm like, "Oh my god!" So they just completely just bullshitted us. And then yeah. I think even the moment I knew that Ash Robin wasn't like worth anything, like as far as leadership wise, was I think he tweeted, "I'm the best community manager in the space" after being a community manager for 2 weeks. So I was like, okay, never mind. So yeah, there's a lot of people that just don't deserve shit in the space.
Did you see the people over allocating whitelist spots? Speaking of the 2 mint per whitelist, I think it was
they do that a lot.
Skeletons or something. I don't know what the project was exactly. Let me see. It should be on Icy
They
Twitter.
do that a lot.
But they held an AMA and they were like, "This is just how life works. Like you're not guaranteed anything in life, and like if you didn't mint, that's on you. Like we didn't
funny.
tell you that we were gonna over allocate the whitelist. It's Skull Tunes, I think. We didn't. They were like, we didn't tell you guys that we were gonna over allocate the whitelist spots, but we did to ensure that we sold out."
it's insane. It's just insane what people think they can get away with, basically. And that just goes back to like maybe the theme of this convo, but like everyone ends up having a police. Everyone ends up having to like just watch out. And that's just kind of the state we're in right now.
I wish I could openly police people.
Well,
Yeah,
some people are starting to do it.
People.
Yep.
Some people are starting to do it.
Yep. Like some of the people we already talked about earlier, like, hey, like they've been doing this for a while. And now there's a pattern and it's clear. And so, what's up?
Is that also project founders taking 50% of mints? More. is absurd, you know.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I mean by the higher standards, right? Like if we don't like that as community members and participants in the space, then we just need to speak up and be like, yo, that's not okay. We can't support your collection
But
if you're gonna do it
have
like
a
that.
cult, people create a cult following around themselves, and they're just a bunch of yes men. So
I see a lot of that too. Yeah, I mean, there are some
there's a
collections
bunch
where
of yes men,
there's
and I
specific
do tell this
collections
to
where
Llama sometimes. I'm
yep,
not calling people yes men, but people trust and love Llama a lot.
yeah,
So when we're making like a big decision and it comes to a vote, I'm like Llama. Like I've told him like this like twice or three times. I'm like, people like you a lot, and they will follow your like your inclination to vote. So just be as neutral as possible in your wording because people will literally follow you. So people have to be very careful. I mean, and a lot of these people actually have like a following, which is like gonna be sticking with them to like the end, essentially. Like at this point, you know, after being around them for such a long time, their followers are very loyal. And it's the same thing as YouTube. YouTube. When I don't think very many YouTubers have been actually like fully cancelled. I think there's one or two, but people get cancelled so often. But as long as they retain that, user base, like a foundational user base of viewers, like they can never get truly cancelled. They just fuck off for like a few weeks, come back. So yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that as well. So you can only do so much, but sometimes it's just not worth it. For people like me and like Llama, it's just not worth our time to have an endless fucking stupid Twitter beef like weeks with some people. Yeah.
what I appreciate is
Um,
when you folks feel strongly about something, you speak up and kind of just go through the dirt
yeah.
and sling the mud around until it's done. But yeah, you can't do that all the time because
Can't
it's
just
just
we can
it's
honestly I
draining.
can yeah, you can do it every other day essentially. There's so much shit, but it's just like we would rather do good by our community than just be at a constant call out and just beef.
So I have a question for you. Um, and I don't think I'm gonna ask you this question because I don't think it's been shared a lot, and I kind of want to know the answer. Um, how do you folks think about community at Llamaverse?
I mean like the community as a collective or community as like the wider NFT community.
Let's say
Sorry,
let's
sorry.
start with
I that was I have I didn't, sorry. Do you mean like our personal community, like the
let's
holders?
start there. Yeah, that's what I care about. I mean, I'm a holder. I care about how you think about this community. So let's start there. So we already talked about the broader
Um,
community, right?
yeah. So I don't really see it as the way I see it and the way I do stuff. So like just to give you guys context, like all the art you guys have, I partially like didn't design it, but I told the people like what to include and what to do. So there's many perspectives that we took where is the art going to be my whole idea with the art, was and the reason why we did art and like obviously a part of from doing the spit token was we wanted to give people a sense of identity within the community because sure we're all names, but it's better when it's like images, so like the reason why most of these llamas have like humanoid traits like such as the bandanas, the chains, the scarves was for that, give a bit more like flavor and touch. That was from like the front end. From the back end, like the way I personally think of community and think for the community is just to balance everything out as much as possible in terms of the ecosystem. So the way when we were thinking about how to design Spit and how to allocate Spit, and then even how to reward the holders that were original holders, and we had this conversation when I'll come back to that later, but for me, like the community obviously matters a lot, and I don't get to speak to all of you guys as much, like personally, because all the fancy announcements and all that fancy stuff Llama does, because it makes sense for him to do. But I'm always like looking out and making sure that we remain as balanced as possible for everyone. So obviously, people might be inclined to look after the animated holders more because they obviously paid more money and they essentially can be seen as, you know, their floor being higher, so they're more valuable. I don't see that, and that's why we did this split token in a way. So yeah, I mean, I would say that I look at the community. I don't look at community as individuals. Look at the community as like a unit. So I do good by the unit, which might lead to fucking over some of them, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's a very weird question to answer, and I think the reason why we're doing this podcast is another like way for us to get close to the community, because it kind of like lets us speak to them, because, you know, announcements are quite one way on the road, and I think like doing this, and then obviously at the end of the AMA or the podcast, we bring people on. That's a good way to engage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what's weird, Hiten? Actually, sorry. Do you know what's weird? I just want to add one last point.
Of course.
When we had the staking problems, I mean, they don't want problems. We just cleared out, because a lot of people just don't read. Like, it's amazing how much people don't read. Like, sorry guys, but you don't fucking read. So we had so many tickets. I think me and Llama went over like hundreds of tickets like the last 2 days, mostly Llama. To the point where me and him would race who's typing first, and you would just see, like, if you were there in a ticket, you would see me and him typing at the same time.
Yep.
And whoever got the sentence out first, he would just stay in the ticket. Basically, it was kind of like a funny game.
Yeah.
And people were like amazed that we were there. They were like,
Oh yeah.
"Oh wow, Llama's talking to me," or like, "Oh wow, administrators are here. Hellequinn's here." I'm like, "Yeah, we're here." Like, such a weird thing to like see that. I guess other people just don't do it. They just don't talk to their holders. I guess other founders.
It's because they go.
Why are people amazed? Why are people amazed that we're there? Who else should be there?
And at my tech company, even like the last two that I started besides the one I have right now, I ran support for 2 years myself as CEO, and people were blown away and I just wanted to be as close to the customer as possible, know whatever problems they're having with our product, because I can go make the engineering team or whoever I need to go do something about it. You know, like devs do something? No, the CEO can make the devs do something. So when the customers feel that and they see it, they sit there and go, oh shit, like I want to do business with this company. When you're small, and this is in startup land, I think NFT projects get big really fast, but when you're small as a little startup, that's the thing you have. You have that ability to be nimble, but more importantly, to show up in a way that a large corporation won't. And it definitely blows people away. And it's important, you know, like, it's like, oh, the CEO is going to respond to my little ticket? Yeah. It's not a little ticket. It's a big deal. Right? Like that kind of stuff is amazing. And I kind of asked you a trick question, because people that do what you and Llama and the team do well, they don't do it consciously. So it's kind of a trick question. I just wanted to know how you answer. It was not
a good answer. It was not.
No. It was a great answer, because you don't know why you do it the way you do. You just know, and Llama does too, that this is how we do things. There's no other way. And and for me, like, after investing in so many founders, helping so many, and starting my own companies, like, that's the magic. The magic is when you can't explain why you do it the way you do, because that's not like your purpose. That's not your goal. Your goal is just to do the right thing and do it for the people that you feel a responsibility to. And when it comes to NFT projects, it's the entire freaking community all the time, you know? So I'm not surprised that you and him were racing at the tickets, because you both have the same
racing for tickets.
I believe
we just told everyone that's on tickets, we're like, guys, we got this. Just let us have it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So we just did it. And then and then when there's like a new holder like comes around, they're like, hey, can I DM you? I'm like, I just answered it. I always answer this. I'm like, you fucker, just DM me. Like, why are you asking me to DM me?
Yeah, I know.
Like, you don't need my permission to DM me.
Not at all. Just like, go for it. Yeah. I tell people
like,
too.
I'm sorry for DMing me. I'm like, mate, like,
why are you sorry? Just DM me. Yeah.
Bro, you're paying money to be here. Why are you apologizing to me for, like, I'm here all day, every day. That's my job.
This is what I do.
Ask the question.
Yeah. No, I wanted to hear this, because it's raw, and again, I didn't expect you to have a good answer. I expected you to have your answer, which is exactly what you gave me, right? You gave examples of how you guys think about things and why you do it like that. I mean, you'd be surprised. You probably wouldn't, because you talk to a lot of NFT project founders too, but like, people don't understand this. They don't understand that all you got to do is show up when you need to, and just do the thing.
Yeah, I guess our founders just don't care. And the thing is, before like working for Llama, like obviously now I ain't got no time to be in other Discord like grinding whitelist or shit. Like I just don't do that. But or just be in any other community actively. You know, I hang around like here and there like once in a while. I don't actually spend time there, but I don't remember before like doing so much here. Like I don't remember founders or like anyone being in chat like anytime. And like, if you look at like the chat, like chat messages, like if you just look up like Llama's name, you can see how many messages he has in this Discord.
Oh yeah,
it's like the new Discord. So yeah,
and honestly, that's a simple trick everyone should do in every collection they go into, and just see. You don't have to judge them, whatever, but just see, right? Like, and figure out if you want to be part of that based on that involvement. I mean, there are collections that I've been in that I was like pretty heavy into the community, really love the community. But then I realized over time that these founders don't want to engage with the community. They only want to do it at certain times and when they feel like it, when it's like, well, actually, don't make the mods deal with your shit, because that's what they essentially do. The mods are dealing with the worst stuff. And then you basically create this barrier and wall between yourself as a founder and the community. And that's honestly the last thing you should be doing in the NFT space, because it's all community. I won't name names, but you can figure it out pretty quickly.
There's a lot that do it. I think for us, I'm not trying to speak for Ali here, but I think it's just like how everything started really impacts where we are at now, and that's why he kind of does it like without thinking about it, you know? Like it's not like he's trying to do that because
the thing is, I'm not here to work. Like I'm not here as a job. I'm just here. Like this is my lifestyle now. Like I said this to Lam as well. Like just like I wake up and I pick up my phone and I see where I've been tagged and I answer it. And I don't see this as like gotta clock in or gotta clock out. I'm like, from the moment I wake up, the moment, which is much 18 hours, I'm just like, the most I look away is I take a break, like an hour and a half break to like watch a movie or something, and I'm still got my Discord on like next to me on my laptop or on my phone.
That's the job.
I'm working. I'm just doing.
But that's the job, and you don't call it a job, but like that's the job. The job is to be present, to be there. If you're gonna start one of these things, that's what you got to do. And I bring this from the startup world. That's how startups are. Like at the most purest, that's how they are. You know, Stripe. That's exactly how they did it. They showed up. They would answer people. You know, you'd see the founders talking about stuff, being in kind of on Hacker News, or you know, they've even written about this. And like, these are the kind of collections. These are or founders and collections and startups and projects that you want to back, because you know that those people are going to be around, and you know they give a shit. And to them, it's not just a job where they get to clock in and clock out. The job is being available and accessible. And sure, like if you don't want to do that, to be frank, don't start a project. Don't start a business. Just don't. It's not going to work out for you. You're not going to make it.
I don't know. I just don't get like how. Oh, do you know what? When I gave up hope initially for Pixelmon, it was when they minted out and Cyber said, "I'm going to go to bed now." Like after like 20 minutes after mint out, he was like, "Yeah, guys, I'm going to write this announcement. I'm going to go to bed." Like you just raised 70 million. Like, oh, like how are you going to bed right now? Like you got so much shit to do. Like so much, you know, things. Like don't like even if you do need to go to bed, like go to bed for a few hours and come back.
You know, I have this saying in tech. I have this saying in tech that I like to say, which is like, the customer doesn't care about your code. And to me, it's kind of the same here. The customer doesn't fucking care about your life. Sorry. Unless it relates to them. And so when you share shit like that, they don't care. You're just basically opening yourself up to FUD and other things too. It's like, you want to go to sleep 20 minutes after? Cool. Go take a nap. You know what I mean? You don't need to announce it. You don't need to say shit. Like, just go do your thing. Because like, you have a community here and you have a responsibility. Obviously, they didn't know what their responsibility truly was.
I don't know. If I see that, I was actually, bro. Like, come on.
They got themselves in way over their heads. But they did it purposely.
Those are most founders.
But they did it purposely.
That's most founders. Yeah, that's the scary part on that.
There's no defending him. No defending him. I don't care. They all did it knowingly. But no, like if like listen, our floor went to 4 ETH. I wasn't happy. I was like, we gotta do more now. We gotta get more out now to justify and make this like even higher. You know, get this like even better. It wasn't like, oh shit, I'm about to make more money. It was just like, oh fuck, like we need to do more. Like a DM, I was like, let's do more now. Like you know, but yeah. I don't know how people do that. There's like a big sense of responsibility every time. Like anything we do, there's like a responsibility to it. Like
Same thing in
why,
startups. Like they
yeah.
like if you've been around long enough, you know that if someone raises more money, it's not the time to congratulate them, because now the work is harder.
Exactly.
The job is harder, right? The bar is higher, right? And like that's how you're treating it. Oh crap, floor price went up. Crap, like we got to do more work. You know, we're already doing a lot of work, but like that's the attitude, because it's like, oh shit, like this thing, like if people buy it now, we got to make sure that and the value of this $10,000 pass, right, so to speak. Yeah, that's yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah, but that's definitely the kind of people that we should all be backing and supporting in this space. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like so many people that just are greedy and just, like don't care. It's because it's like, oh, people that go on holidays and shit after they mint. I'm like, yo, where are you going, bro?
I think it's just
Colin...
a lack of understanding of how hard this stuff is for real for them, but also like how much obligation and responsibility you're putting on your back when you start one of these things. And most people aren't prepared for it, and they're probably not even capable of that level of responsibility. And so that's why so many projects die and things like that. I mean, this is the same as startups, frankly, and I know I keep bringing it up, but all the parallels exist except for one thing, which is this is 100% community first. And the second thing would be the pace in this space is like outrageous. It's outrageous. And it's very hard for a collection or a community or founders to really think through like, what is our purpose and what are we here to do? That's why, again, bringing it back to Llamaverse, like one of the things I love is like it's very clear what the intention is here, right? To me, it's like the closest collection to my own personal intentions about the space, which is fun and profit. And everything I see you folks doing, it's in one of those two categories, with your holders, even the scavenger hunts, all that stuff. It's like it's what makes you have fun while you're in this space. And then obviously the trading and the tips and alpha sharks and all the stuff that's coming up, spit and the whitelist opportunities, those are all the whole let's be traders, let's make money, let's like figure out how to work in this space for ourselves so we can earn a better living or whatever it is, quit our jobs, whatever it is everyone's goals are. And it's all possible in just one community. I haven't seen any other community like that, and I think it's because of the way that your attitude is and how you and Llama kind of think through these things, and how much dedication you have to the project and the community and providing continuous utility. Again, not trying to make this a commercial about Llamaverse, because everyone here kind of is already a holder and whatnot, but like at the end of the day, like this is what I'm looking for when I look at other projects. I'm looking for people that are dedicated to what they're doing, because those are the communities you want to invest in. And also people that don't just like make excuses for mistakes. Like I'm going to call them out because like they really upset me at the end of the day, but the cool cats have like shown that they don't know how to do anything with all the delays and everything. And to our point from earlier that we were making, like it's pathetic. How are you a blue chip and you can't build? How are you blue chip and you're going to have those delays? How are you a blue chip and not able to prevent bots? When I know collections with so much less than them that have had flawless mints and with all the same pressure. And then they make up excuses like, oh, we're a target because we're cool cats. No, everyone's a target in this space because there's money to be made. That's an excuse. And then if I say anything, you get all the maxis showing up and be like, no. They're okay. They're fine. They're whatever. Yes, and I'm like, no, I'm a holder too. Like, this is not okay. Like, they can't do that. They can't be a blue chip. They should lose their status at this point with their behavior. And I'm not even talking about them as a participant in the ecosystem. I'm just talking about the facts here on their delays and their lack of an ability to build product that for a blue chip is unacceptable. And then on top of that, if you hear more about some of these folks in the space, and what they do to other collections, oh man, don't even get me started on that. So yeah, I don't know. Some of these got lucky and are early, and they don't know what to do, and they can't execute. And I was one of the most critical when Cool Cats got a new CEO. I'm like, this ain't gonna end well. Nothing against the CEO or anything, but I've seen that story in tech over and over again. Now the founders aren't actually leading the company, and that's just not good. That's not good. That's not gonna scale. It's not gonna work. That works like 1% of the time in tech. You can point to Google and said it worked, sure, but there's not very many examples where that process of a non-founder CEO making a company successful at early stages. And yes, Cool Cats is still at early stages. It is not a mature business by any means.
Are they a business though? Like, what the fuck have they done?
Hey, that's a whole nother story. Where's the utility? Yeah. What's the deal? What's up with this game? How come my egg hasn't hatched yet? I mean, I could keep going. Also, eggs. Yeah, well, they have eggs.
That's how this space works. They have eggs.
I have one egg. I sold one egg. I still have 2 Cool Cats. But yeah, I get it. They have eggs.
There's this eggs. There's this guy called Scout. He bought 2 of them, and I was like, why would you waste your money? He bought it recently. I was like, why would you waste your money on the Cool Cat? What does a Cool Cat give you?
They get bought by Bored Apes, and then they do well, hopefully.
Yeah, fuck that. That's your fucking hope for an investment. You don't deserve money. You don't deserve to have 30k to spend on the fucking... I'm sorry. I'm just saying, if people... I made this joke yesterday when I saw that individual who has a Genesis Kong and a mutant and a Basie when he bought llamas. I was like, oh wow, this might be his first taste of utility. Because it's true. Because most of these motherfuckers don't got nothing. Okay, ape coin and all that shit, but I'm just like, yeah. No.
When you're early in a space, and you're literally number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, you can get away with a lot early on, and your success will take a lot of time to get diminished, even when you're pretty bad, because in this space, the way I would calculate it is because there's so much of the Pixelmon and so much of the opposite going on that things like the Cool Cats failures or Bored Apes, a lot of people thinking they should have more utility beyond just ApeCoin already, etc.
They should.
All that stuff gets ignored.
Don't even get me started on that one.
It gets ignored. I mean, look, you have the right to get started on that one because you're working on a project and you are very clear about wanting to continuously add value and utility, right? And again, nothing wrong with the Bored Apes or anything like that because they were early. They were early and they were literally made that whole PFP stuff work first before anyone else did. And they get that. They get a lot of leeway for that. I would say an incredible amount. So they're fine, right? But when you look at Cool Cats and you look at a bunch of other collections that are supposed blue chips, you have to look sideways and be like, what are they doing? What have they done for their community lately that's meaningful? And the answer is nothing.
Apart from get the money.
So people are just excited that the floor is high and they're holders, right? But even those collections, when you look right now at the liquidity, Cool Cats does not have strong liquidity at the moment. So this is why, when someone buys some of these things, I'm like, wait, hold on. Are you going to buy and hold for the next pump? Because cool. Just make sure that's your strategy and make sure you're getting a collection where you think it will pump again. But the truth is, I don't know if Cool Cat's going to pump again.
Unless Bored Apes acquires them.
I have no clue why Bored Apes would acquire Cool Cats anytime soon. But at the same time, they're definitely making moves that are non-traditional in the sense of somewhat unexpected. So we'll see. But if they really truly build a holding organization and feel like they can fix the problems of Cool Cats, sure. The thing is though, the punks, the crypto punks and Meebits and that group and those collections, they had a lot less utility and a lot less baggage, in my opinion, that it made it much easier to acquire them than something like Cool Cats.
But it also made it much more expensive.
Oh, that doesn't matter because now you have one group that has number one and number two. That's less important, right? Like I get what you're saying, but it's less important because now you're looking at one collection or one group, sorry, that has both all those, not even both, all those collections in there. So they've basically stamped their presence in the space no matter what with those buys. I think it was really smart and it was really timely, and I think it'll probably make Meebits and CryptoPunks a better going forward collection set of NFTs and collections. But it was definitely a surprise, and it was definitely something that I would say was partially out of left field and unexpected. That being said, like the Larva Labs announcement about it and stuff like that is very clear, right? Like they basically said that, you know, these people know how to do this. We are just two engineers from Google basically that started this and got here, but we don't know about these PFPs and how to cultivate community and what these people want and need. And it's that's kind of proven out, you know, with the how dormant that collection has been and how there's all this random drama about it because those folks like were early and they built something really cool, very early, built something cool with no intentions of building a business from what I can tell and from my understanding.
Yeah.
So that one made sense. While the Cool Cats, I think they still think they can be independent, and you know the rumors of them selling to Disney were like super noisy for a long time, and a lot of people would tell me they're buying because Cool Cats are going to sell to Disney. Literally, that was the message. I really wonder how that rumor got out, but like, you know, that has been the word on the street for quite some time.
Did we ever discuss with you about people getting too much money and stop caring? Was that with you or someone else?
You mean project founders, or
Yeah, I think we did discuss that once.
you and I did probably? Yeah, we've discussed a lot of things, so we both like to rant. Yeah,
So that's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I just think people don't realize what they're getting into in this space, and like, it's easy to get really tired, especially as a founder. It's easier to get tired as a founder in this space than any other space I've ever seen, in terms of like starting businesses. And
Yeah.
so, in some ways, it's more like more education for founders about, hey, here's what you're getting into, here's why. I think one of the things I was ranting about earlier today was the idea that founders don't know what they're getting into, and there is no clear exit strategy for a founder if they no longer want to work on their collection. Yeah, there's options, and there's like the community taking over and crap like that, but like there isn't a clear like here's how I get out of this. Here's how I make this not mine anymore. That hasn't like there isn't a good format for that. There is no shutting down a project really without like really taking a massive reputation hit. So I think you're kind of between a rock and a hard place when you start a project and build a community and mint out, because then now you're in it. What do you do? And there's plenty of collections I'm in where like they try to come up with really creative solutions to offload more and more responsibility from the founders to the community, like whether it's various DAOs or multi-sig and all that. I have not seen anything work successfully yet in that model. I'm excited about the model, but I haven't seen anything work successfully yet.
Probably gonna take a while.
Yeah. This idea of collective ownership is already here. We already have collective ownership to a big extent, but we're still putting like, you know, we're still in a, it's weird. We're still in an old paradigm if you think about it. The old paradigm is the startups have founders, businesses have founders. These are the people that started it, and they're the ones everyone looks up to, you know, whatever. But if we're really truly to go after decentralization, that concept needs to kind of have some tweaks to it. I think that's very idealistic. I'm not saying that like I'm a major advocate for that yet, because every DAO that I've seen and anyone that knows anything about DAOs will tell you the same, is that they have a lot of there's a lot of slowness, and that's very ironic in this space because of votes. And if someone's really dug in, they realize that you can't do any votes on a 50-50. Most of the DAOs that I've seen that are understand anything is they do like more of like 60-40. voting and things like that, because there's just challenges with getting enough votes fast enough and all kinds of things like that. Anyway, just really fascinating stuff, and I think a lot of this stuff is going to evolve. I would say sooner than later, but it's probably more later than sooner, just because one of the biggest things is there's a major knowledge gap in the space. When someone first enters, how long does it take them to like get up to speed on a lot of the stuff we've been talking about and things like that? Forever. And oftentimes they have a skewed perspective depending on how they got into the space, who they're believing and trusting, and kind of that.
Yeah, that's true. There's actually near time to. I think they're in here to bring on our guest here, and I think you're gonna like them. Is FleetCommander and his team from Citadel.
Oh wow!
So we're just waiting for them to, and then we can just bring them up, and then talk about their project, and then you can pick holes at it if you wish.
So I've been working with engineers for 18 years. I am not an engineer. I stopped programming at QBasic, which is a very old programming language at this point, and it's not even really a programming language. It was just what came with MS-DOS back in the day. So that was like when I was like 10 or 12. But what I like to say is I can out Google pretty much every engineer out there, and can usually solve their problems when it's a Google problem faster than they can. But I thoroughly enjoy working with engineers and helping them do their jobs, to be honest. A lot of that has to do with trade-offs, helping them think through like decisions and things like that. So I really enjoy working with engineers, and it doesn't matter what kind or type or even like some brainiac from Google I enjoy talking to, because I've done my research on a lot of these engineering things. I'm very dangerous at making decisions even on a very low level. So I feel like if I were to write code, I would probably drive myself crazy. And I'm better off in a position where I get to work with engineers and work with some really great engineers. And because all the things that I do for my businesses, they don't get done without software. So I have to be very good at that. And I have to be very good at like helping engineers with things that they can't help themselves with. So for example, like, with engineers on our team, like in my companies, sometimes they'll call me and it'll be like a 30-second call, because they just know that I will unblock them. And if they have an option, and if they usually give me options, I can help them choose the option that they should go with really quickly. A lot of times it's just because of the way I think about things and various ways that I kind of look at like businesses and products. And oftentimes when you're writing code, you're kind of in the weeds, right? And it's hard to go think about the customer or who's going to use it or how are they going to use it. So I tend to bring a lot more of that to the table, and it's a joy to work with engineers that appreciate that and respect that, because a lot of engineers have worked with really, 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 really shitty product managers and product people. And shitty meaning, I don't think these product people mean to be shitty, but they just don't go deep. They don't want to talk about things, and they also want to increase scope and keep saying when like it's not usually about when, it's more about how, not when, because how you do something determines when you can ship it.
That answers your question, Colin. So
the only reason I was segueing that into this, because I know I believe Fleet's a dev, and then a couple other the guys from the Citadel team are developers. So once we let them introduce themselves and they start talking about their project, I think we'll get to know them a little bit more. So quite interesting. What's going on, Fleet?
Hey man, nice to meet you guys.
How you doing?
What's up?
Pretty good. Got most of the team here. Heimdall is just checking really quick. Can you guys hear me well? Because my mic has been having kind of problems the last few days. So.
Oh, we hear you pretty well. Yeah, pretty well.
Yeah,
right.
I turned you
All
on.
right, great. Perfect. In that case, yeah, I mean, we have most of the team here. Heimdall, just like mostly the numbers and economist guy, architect who's the lead developer, and even though he's not in the call, our other main developer alongside him is sitting next to him because they share an office. Flam is just a really creative builder and talented thinker when it comes to DAO structure and overall virtual worlds and game design. and then finally myself, kind of the Mr. Everything role to a certain extent. I dabble in everybody else's roles and lead the project to a certain degree. So a little bit of everything when it comes to the project.
So, for those who do not know, would you like to explain your project, the Citadel, a little bit more? And just
Yeah,
go into
sure,
what you guys are planning to do with it.
definitely. So Citadel is definitely an interesting project. It's a little bit of a passion project of ours. We've been kind of dedicated EVE Online players, or at least some of the core team has, for quite some time. Mainly myself, mining officer, and an architect who's pretty aware of it for the last 10 years. And for those of you who don't know what EVE Online is, it's one of the largest MMOs in very space set genre over the last 2 decades. But the main thing that's special about it is it's been a fully player driven economy for like the last 20 years. And it's a very brutal game to say the least in terms of the learning curve and how extensive the depth of it goes and the overall freedom of player decision and market and just exercisable will. And so we've been kind of inspired by that as very interested in the economy of Eve to create a blockchain version of the same kind of core philosophies and ideas. Because, I mean, we've had this rough idea for about since 2015 to do a blockchain game that follows kind of the blueprint of what EVE Online does in terms of their player economy for, almost 8 or 7 years now. And then, you know, around this time or so in NFTs, we kind of saw how they kind of came about as a means of letting players trade freely. And we kind of saw that like this is like the right time to, see that vision through in terms of exploring that idea of can we create a game that follows the same idea of EVE Online with its economy and player freedom and mesh that together with blockchain tech of decentralization and the new niche, which was very interesting and fun to learn about, of on-chain games. And so, to give a broad overview, since that was kind of a less exact view of the game, Citadel is just a strategy space game implemented on Ethereum blockchain. Experienced artists, developers, we're all just huge space fans, and basically, like many of the other games that kind of come before it, we use NFTs to generate, claim, steal, burn, and exchange tokens. But unlike a lot of the games that have come before it, Citadel has kind of expanded on past previous ideas of play to earn concepts. We've added kind of staking pools with different risk and reward propositions, limited resource staking pools, real-time player positioning that's fully on chain, so there's distance relative to other players and objects in the game, and places to go. And on top of all that, we wrapped it together with a inspiration from the decentralization that's kind of commonplace in DeFi projects and adopted a very heavy community first governance model with a follow up true on chain DAO and reduced owner privileges, things like that. So, meaning upon launch, the project is fully decentralized and fully operated by our community DAO, where the ships represent ownership, and the DAO is a real DAO, where the D in it actually, is real and it's decentralized to a very high degree. And the A, which is the autonomous part, is that all the contracts are fully, upgradable and autonomous and meant to be operated by the DAO. So proposals and changes that want to be made via community building or any certain extent is possible, meaning that there doesn't need to be a centralized executor, which is the problem with a lot of DAOs in the NFT space, is they're just kind of titles and not the real thing.
I think that was the biggest breakthrough when I saw your guys' project. The fact that you guys are actually putting everything into the DAO and it's not just like one of those fake throw it in my roadmap and you guys get this as well, and there's really no actual value behind it other than the fact that we'll throw some NFTs in there. Like the whole project is completely being put in there, and that's insane. It's unheard of. No one's ever done that. Which
it's definitely interesting.
Oh yeah, it definitely stuck out to me a lot because you don't ever see that, and everything gets rugged. It means a lot.
Well, I think it's important if we're talking about, we're in a space where everything gets rugged. We have the technology and ability to explore these types of new ideas of decentralization and, founder accountability quite easily. It's a public ledger after all, and pretty malleable in how you want it to operate. So it's kind of ridiculous to a certain extent if you really want to look at it that we keep having the same exact problems that we've had for about a year now with projects rugging and founders failing to deliver because we just kind of keep repeating the same exact setup. Founders are clearly the pinpoint, uh, you know, the failure pinpoint in projects where things mostly fall apart. Communities and founders tend to have a dissonance that forms over time as founders' interest shift from what community's interest is. And then on top of all that, founders usually are the ones that own all the contracts, the royalties, the project itself, meaning when the founders lose interest or they fail to deliver, they just walk away. And they don't, one, they completely, obliterate their community that is still hopeful or really excited or wants to build on top of the project. I've seen a lot of projects do. Community building has been crazy. It's praised pretty often in the Web3 space as community building, but we have project after project, nearly every project where it's still centralized and we're still in this kind of Web2 dressed up as Web3 space when that defeats the whole point, in my opinion. So with our project, we try to, lean into it where the project is fully owned by its community. The majority of the mint funds go to the trustless treasury that is held by the DAO and not the founders. All the contracts are owned by the DAO. All the contracts are meant to be operated and upgraded via the DAO, meaning us as founders will also use the DAO.
Wait, so you're not taking 50%? Sorry, that was a bad joke. I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. But sorry, I'm just excited that you guys are doing all of that.
No.
We're just talking about people that take like half the mint money for themselves. So I was just making a joke. Sorry.
Oh no.
Yeah. We're all ranting about it.
No, yeah, it's a huge problem. I mean, founders are ridiculous.
It is.
Profit-seeking opportunists are abundant in the NFT space, and I think we would see a lot more of a revolution or kind of exciting market and time period if communities weren't completely being left with nothing every step of the way from project conception to launch to after. I mean, we keep doing the same thing over and over, and we keep ending up in the same exact spot. We should try and change some stuff. That's kind of the point of Citadel, and what we want to do is hopefully try some new ideas and new strategies. And if it's popular, maybe the market adopts and uses some of those strategies more often afterwards.
Yeah, I agree with that 100% because if it succeeds, right, and you guys do like show that the model is able to be done, then there's almost no reason for the model not to succeed and for it to be widely adopted. You know what I mean? Like then it almost eliminates the risk factor of having like no trust in the founder project, because even you said it yourself, like if say one day like the community didn't want you guys as founders, but obviously this wouldn't happen because you guys are great people and you guys know what you're doing. I wouldn't want anyone else to run the project. They could completely remove you, which sounds insane, but the possibilities of what you guys are doing that makes it.
You want to get ousted?
Yeah.
Well, it's just about laying the foundation that these things can happen, which instills more confidence and trust that they don't need to happen, but in the worst case scenario, they can.
It's just like a confidence thing.
I'm actually more excited about you guys now that I know you played EVE Online because that shit is complicated as fuck. So looking at your calculations and stuff, I'm like more confident in your ability because you've played the game. You've played similar games, and I've played. I never got into EVE, but I played this game called Travian, if you know it. It's like
I know, yeah, it's a browser game.
It's a browser game, but it's like a whole year-long like game. It's all about like. Anyway, yeah. So I'm excited that you guys have like hands-on experience with similar stuff compared to just someone coming and going like, "Hey, I can make a space game," So yeah, honestly, I'm just gonna link everyone your white paper and yellow
Yeah, I
paper.
already did in my AMA chat. They're all saying the yellow paper is so complicated, which, to be fair, there's so much stuff that you got to grasp it all. It takes multiple reads.
Yeah, the yellow paper is super dense, and I mean, to be clear, you don't need to read or understand the yellow paper or all parts of it to succeed at the game or to play it. I mean, the yellow paper is a technical deep dive into how each, aspect of the game functions, how the economy is balanced, or the rationale behind like the technical choices we made. It's mainly for people who are interested in building on top of the game, like through the DAO, because that's the point of the project. It's a decentralized community, default community by default project. So the purpose of the paper is to, democratize all the information of the game's internals, so people who are even not developers can still, understand what the contracts are doing.
Yeah, no, the thing is, it's with such like complicated stuff. I saw you guys had a calculator. I was like, I love these guys already because Llama showed me you guys' project, or someone did like ages ago, and I was looking at your yellow paper, and I was like, oh my god, it's fucking complicated as shit. And then I saw calculators, and I was like, okay, cool. Because the thing is, people don't realize like all of this complicated shit can like exist when there's tools and explanations for everything. People can very easily sit down and grasp it after a while.
Oh yeah.
Because right now, everyone's attention is on us talking, not on the yellows paper and the white paper. So when they have time, they can literally spend half an hour to an hour if they're really interested.
Yeah, no, exactly. You will learn
know,
everything that's in the yellow paper by just
you will learn it. Yeah,
by playing
I've
the
played
game.
complicated games. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like you'll make mistakes, but you will get it eventually. And there's other people that will help you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and
I'm excited.
The game interface makes all of this easy. You don't need to know the formulas. You don't need to be able to use the calculators. All of this stuff is done for you. This is just if you want to explore with the numbers and try things that you're curious about. But the game interface makes the game easy to play. It's very important. People are very hung up on the yellow paper that they think they need a math degree to succeed at the game. It's
That's bullshit. That was so loud.
It's a simple to play game with a lot of in-depth foundation that allows for future building on top of it with ease and allow creativity.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, it's when Hiten speaks, guys. Just be quiet. Not you guys. I'm just talking about our community. When Hiten's talking, you just listen to the guy. I promise you do good in life.
Thanks. I had a question. I snuck myself into the architects area because I just was at the right place at the right time, and it was because of a Llamaverse member. But basically, I've been kind of lurking and watching you folks kind of talk about the project with kind of that architects group, and I guess it's the architect's apprentice and all that. I had one comment, and then I had kind of a question. So my comment is that explanation that you just shared about how simple the game is going to be to play and why you've also added the yellow paper and the complexity. I hope you guys kind of put that out more, because that's the piece that I think today, at least, and this might be intentional, which I totally get, because you folks are super intentional from what I can tell compared to most founders out there and most teams. That I think would help a lot, in my opinion, with people understanding that they get to play a fun game and it's going to be simple, despite all the complexity and why you're sharing it. Because that explanation was so crisp, and it took me a long time of just digging into a lot of your material to like understand that. And so anyway, I think for the success of the project, it'd be great for people to kind of feel that simplicity, because you folks have so much depth. It's so much depth. It's insane. So then, anyway, don't need to comment on that. Just a thought for you folks. But the big question I had, of course. Happy to give you feedback. I'm also in your thing, so I just haven't found an opportunity to give you a hard time about anything yet. Just lurking.
I'm looking forward to it.
You will.
Yeah.
Trust me, you will.
Happy to help with the simpler stuff, but right now you folks are deep in all the complexities of building an amazing game and economy. But what I wanted to ask you about is just briefly, like I guess it's two things, but I'm curious for all the people here, like how how do I put this? What's the how did you guys come to wanting to do things this way? Because it's full on impressive when I think about everything you already said. Like you guys said it better than I can because you're deep in it. But like you folks literally seem like you want to do something extremely different in this space, whether it's transparency or the full on community DAO thing. And I completely agree. We were just talking about this earlier before you folks hopped on about DAOs and how there's lots of problems with DAOs today. And not to say that, but yet the opportunity is humongous.
Exactly.
So would love to just hear that stuff because I think everyone would appreciate understanding where you folks are coming from. You guys already started that on this call, but like I just want to know more. I'm so curious.
No, I love the question. It's a great question. Just to kind of recap, because I think there's a few in there. So the first kind of question is like, what led us to wanting to do things this way in terms of how the project is structured with the DAO and that sort of thing, right?
100%. Yep.
Sure. I mean, interesting question. It's the first time I've gotten it yet. Honestly, I mean, what's coming to head right now or my mind is that I love the crypto space. I think we all have. I've been a really huge fan of decentralization for a really long time because I just think it enables a lot of amazing opportunity. And just generally, I've been surprised that like decentralized finance has been such a huge market mover and new area of tech and finance, and that they have like significantly benefited from decentralization. So like just from viewing from like, you know, an outside angle, like if it's acceptable for decentralized finance to kind of, you know, survive with these sort of things and do it well and really thrive, then I really saw no reason that NFTs couldn't have the same exact idea to a certain extent. And that's a bit complicated. The reality is it's challenging, and challenging is fun. And I think it's important that these things become more commonplace in a market and in a community that is plagued by these things that this structure, I would imagine, solves. I love NFTs. Like I love the community. It's vibrant and exciting. There's constant building going on. There's constant exploration and curiosity, and it's personally like hurt to see that stunted or harmed because of just profit-seeking opportunist after profit-seeking opportunist. And so it's kind of just combining a lot of all the ideas of that I and the rest of the team kind of found interesting all together and seeing if we can make it work. I mean, there's a lot of like answers here for all, you know, each one, but I think a really good answer is, you know, at least for the DAO and the decentralization aspect for a game, is because I think games are kind of the best use case for DAOs at the moment, considering the long uphill battle that, you know, the utility and success and potential that DAOs may have on a larger scale of a new organizational type. They're really maybe perfect for games at the moment because we've already seen for like the last 20, 30 huge gaming communities have formed around just popular games and interests from all over the world, just, you know, thanks to the internet and the accessibility of the internet and communication. And from that, from those communities that formed, we saw huge modding communities take place. And now the modding aspect of video games is really what sets genres and what sets popular trends in the gaming industry as a whole. And so it's the players that have always led the largest changes and had the coolest ideas and explored them more than the companies or the studios or things like that. What made the modding community so interesting is that it was accessible to everyone and anyone could explore all types of different mediums. But the issue is that, you know, it was still a Web 2 centralized project. Mods were auxiliary. They weren't, you know, the main thing, but they're so popular and so fun that they sort of, still became the main thing and, commonplace. But just like how we have founders and NFT projects that grow dissonance to their communities, we have the same issue in video games where developers and companies seek profits and shareholder, pleasing the shareholders and investors more than, aiming to serve their communities or the players, especially an issue with EVE Online, which is why it's very, important to me. But so what I think is really interesting with DAOs and the decentralization aspect with video games is you can make the modding stage or modding community, center stage, and really give them full power and ownership and have their voice and say about a game or ideas actually matter and be real this time. Modding, I mean, every popular game in the current video game industry is from mods. I mean, League of Legends and Dota 2 are from Warcraft 3 mods, and all the battleground, Royale genre is from
Best game
PUBG.
in the world ever, Warcraft 3.
Yeah, definitely. But like, all the battle royale popularity in the gaming genre with Fortnite came from PUBG, and PUBG came from DayZ, and DayZ came from Arma 2. And so I just think it's like the most interesting possible idea if you just started a game and started to, a community, and you utilize the decentralized tech of blockchain to empower that community to own the game, to own the decisions, and to have a say. Obviously, it's a high-level overview, but I think it would be quite fascinating to watch and or take a part in. I'm very thankful that I get to build a part in it, but I'm excited to, create the foundation and see what happens with it.
I'm so bullish, just because of the way you're thinking about this, and I really never really made the connection to gaming and the power of a DAO, and I think you folks are going to really run a grand experiment here. That's really, really, really compelling.
And this flows back to why the yellow paper, why the complexity, because usually all this information in modding communities or games or video games is hidden in the code, and people have to dig into it, and the community has to make their own resources, but that takes months of a dedicated person who's invested enough to do that and then publicize it. We want to make everything public. I mean, we've had Web2 projects where we've tried to be, the salesman, and every single part of building became more annoying because we had to hide the process. But this feels like an opportunity to not have to go through that, and for it to finally be encouraged that transparency and decentralization and documentation and resources are important and public and available. All of our dev tools will be available. Every decision that we made is available. And to, I'll keep rambling forever, so I'm going to stop and let someone else talk. But
I could hear you talk about this for a while, because a lot of things are just clicking as you're talking, and that rarely happens for me when someone's kind of speaking their truth and how they think about things. But there's so much there and so many layers to what you're saying. That's my take. Thanks for answering my question. It was very valuable to hear how you think about it, and kind of I don't know, your angle on the DAO plus gaming and why is so powerful. And it feels so spot on that this just needs to happen and someone needs to do it. So I'm super stoked that you are, especially because I dabble in every piece of crypto that I can, from mining to DeFi to shitcoins to NFTs to whatever, because I want to understand everything. And when I hear some of the things you said there, especially around the DeFi and what we've seen there, I don't think any of it has touched NFTs in terms of the true nature of it. So if you're gonna do that, please count me in. I'm already in, but count me in. This sounds like a really fun experiment. And then last thing I'll say on it is the games that exist today in the NFT space are pure shit.
Oh, they
are. And even the ones that look good, feel good, we're you could just tell we're at early stages. The pure shit isn't a negative comment. It's just more the level that we're at in the space. But when you talk about making it community driven, and your job, it sounds like as architects, it sounds like that's the play, and now I understand it more from the way you spoke about it right now, is just to lay a foundation and make sure it's really solid.
Exactly.
And then kind of not let it go, but let it be and operate, and let the community kind of help make it what it needs to be or what it's going to be. And I don't see any other of these GameFi or whatever you want to call them projects thinking that way at all. Not a knock on them. They have all kinds of
Of
other
course.
aspirations, but like they're spending all this time. They are building a lot of complexity, just like you folks are. I'm sure you folks are thinking way more on the complexity side than anyone else, but they have complex things going on. They have multiple things going on, and yet they're putting all that effort in, but there is no foundation to enable the project to continue. I don't want to say without them, but without the same kind of efforts it took them to start it. And
Exactly.
that gives me a lot more confidence in what you're doing and how you're thinking about it.
No, it's super interesting, and I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here. I mean, a lot of it is the DAO, obviously, um, and I mean that I think a lot here, and so I'm gonna do one more ramble to wrap up my point from a little bit earlier, and also segue into
Honestly,
a
I
new
think everyone is
conversation.
down to hear you ramble. I'm looking at the chat right now and all that, so please don't even
All right,
caveat. Like this is a group that
perfect.
actually appreciates the depth, from my understanding. So please go.
Definitely. In that case, okay.
Just go
To
off, dude. I knew you were fleet commander, but now you're showing up and saying it because from the community, people are really they like to hear you talk, and I think here you're in a good space for that. So, and it's just honestly, it's an honor. It's a huge opportunity, in my opinion, to hear you ramble on, so to speak.
That's my favorite thing anyone's ever said to me. I've always loved to ramble, but to circle back to one point here, um, I that what how you're talking about how the gaming communities kind of clicks with the DAO and kind of solves all these problems. Yeah, it goes even deeper than I think what people might may not realize. And a comparison I'd like to make, how I talked about it earlier, how we've already seen like how passionate and dedicated and loyal gaming communities you know can grow to be or have been for the last few decades. The modding communities, in my opinion, really remind me of NFT projects to a certain extent. Because you have games like Fallout New Vegas, who I'm sure a lot of you have played, who, have games over a decade old by now. But if you go on Nexus mods or any modding platform, there are new mods being released. I'm going to say weekly, but it's honestly probably daily, just by the amount of activity and people who are still interested in the game, because the community is still so vibrant over a good idea and a good foundation. And so we've now seen a game that has been carried by its community for 10 plus years just through mods, and they're not just changing basic things. There's mods that entirely create new stories and new parts of the map that are bigger than the original game. And there's mod teams that like group up together and build these things together. We see the whole idea of what Web3 aims to be in terms of community building on projects like this already exist in the video game community through modding, because it's happened a dozen times over. But what's really exciting about realizing that is if you combine that with the DAO, you maybe start to broach on solving the problems that DAOs have. Because, you were talking earlier, I think, Hiten, about issues with DAOs. And I think a lot of them is that most DAOs see little to almost no participation. And well, that's not like necessarily an inherently super bad thing, uh, just blanket statement. I think the reason that is because like majority of DAOs are just, I mean, straight up like they're just low key boring. I mean, for majority of people, because they're just like super tech related and they're not like a common. You have to like it's such a very niche, you know, DAO that has to operate, which is why you end up with that low participation. But what if you had a DAO in a video game? I mean, DAO participation in our sense, just say Citadel or just the game in general, probably wouldn't be as boring as other DAOs because you're not, a lot of it you're voting and workshopping proposals centered around a game or building one. I mean, who hasn't wanted to build their own game or suggest their own idea or group with friends to just, I mean, have an interest in trying it out. And so you might kind of end up with that super passionate, loyal, dedicated community that we see modding communities have now with actual power in say in a decentralized format, which is the DAO, because they already do it, but they have nothing to actually like facilitate and support them. They're just so passionate and so loyal and so dedicated, they do it anyways, and it works. So now if you combine all that together with a really like full, true, like actual autonomous DAO like ours, where the community doesn't need to rely on founders or the core team to execute like their ideas or their actions, this also means that like we don't need to be the executors or have any centralized power for ourselves as the core team, because we can just use the DAO as well. And then I think that starts approaching the issue of like the DAOs usually have a really slow start. They take a few months to get their footing going, if ever, and or it's small, but especially in the NFT space. And I think a lot of that is because founders usually create DAOs for the communities, but the founders aren't part of the DAOs. The founders still move and operate outside of the DAO, and the community votes on things and has ideas, and then they hope that the founder executes it or follows through with it or uses the money for the thing that they voted on. That's not the case here, because upon launch, we're just part of the community. We're probably going to be like, the core contributors to the protocol, but like we're not the founders or we're not the owners. We don't execute things. We get to build our own ideas. And what I think is really exciting about that is beyond all the resources and documentation that we're going to create or are creating and putting out before launch, is that we get to actually lead by example. And every time we do anything, it's a further resource for people to learn from or to base off of or to act as a template, because we'll be using the DAO ourselves for all the things that we want to do in the game because we have to. It's decentralized, it's autonomous. All of our proposals for the game or the economy or new mechanics will be structured in an actual proper proposal, that follows the right forms of due diligence and the channels that it needs to follow, and then has the cost broken down and the reasoning and the in-depth. It's like, for those of you here who read our, Citadel announcements, imagine that, but compacted into a proposal around a single idea. And I think that's the issue a lot with a lot of DAOs, at least in the NFT community, is that the founders aren't part of them. And so the community has to just lean on themselves to do anything, but that usually doesn't happen. And things just kind of fall apart. This is a really far ramble, but I'm super excited on the idea that we have to use it as well. And I think it'll be just like the perfect example of leading by example for the community to follow. And it's on the chain, so those proposals and the work we did will always be there for the future, even for, if we disappear for any reason, those resources are, persistent.
Don't worry about rambling, because we have myself and a few other ramblers in this community, so they're used to it. They've literally sat here for 2-minute rambles. Yeah, they'll live. But yeah, I'm gonna do my thing, which I usually do, which is I try to pick holes in people's projects.
Go for it.
For like a good cause. So, I've played some kind of complex games. I'll say, I would like to think, I don't really enjoy like just basic shooters, stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm kind of familiar with games like yours. So do you think that obviously these games take a lot of time to balance, and when there's an economy into the game that people spend hundreds of thousands of hours in there, and let's say a big community within the community joins to like create a faction or something, if that's a part of the game in the future, which I imagine it would be. Do you think that letting people have the ability to vote as a DAO, which are players, might skew the gameplay favorable towards these big factions, if that makes sense? So if there's like a change that benefits a faction, they're not going to vote to remove it, right?
Oh, okay. No, I get what you're saying. So the idea is like, in a simple form, corruption from a large group of players voting in their interest.
Essentially, yeah. Could there be like a caveat where some really good resource, or there's like a slight exploit or a slight advantage they have that they can exploit by voting for not changing it. So how do you think that might be something that could happen, or do you think that there'll be somehow a way to mitigate that.
If that were to happen, it would have to be, I think, like Hiten touched on earlier, that faction would have to be such a large majority of the game to force that proposal to go through, or at that point, it creates the it creates the argument. It's like, well, then maybe they do know what they're doing to a certain extent, right? I mean, like, if they've somehow created a community that it is majority of the actual entire player base, I mean, and they're all aligned on a single idea, maybe it's a good idea. I mean, I guess, you're talking about there's an exploit that benefits
There's
them,
always
a flaw in the economy
no,
that they're taking advantage
yeah,
of.
not even that, but I mean, yeah, because I mean, I've seen changes in games that a lot of people are very upset at because they're used to the norm. So, in the cases like that, if it's in the community's hands to vote, wouldn't there be, kind of a stagnation in like changing the game because people kind of are used to something and they enjoy it in a way? Does that make sense?
Maybe, but also, I mean, if you're talking about like economic flaws or things that they're purposely not voting.
Oh no, I'm just talking in general. You know how like when there's like a slight change in the game, people just kind of like cry out. Or there's like a majority, no, a minority of people that are just super loud, just kind of get upset at things. Do you think that's going to lead to like changes not being
No,
accepted? Oh.
no, I don't think so. I don't see any reason why progression on new ideas and new mechanics and new types of gameplay would be slowed down or argued against by the community, because all the community ever asks for in NFT space is new stuff and new ideas and exploration. I get what you're saying though about like people don't like changes sometimes because it modifies their favorite build, or like their perfect setup that they strategize for isn't perfect anymore. That's also like the whole point of games in general. I mean, things change. If the game stays stagnant,
exactly.
then things die. I think a lot of that has to deal with cultivating a community and instilling that kind of manifesto or idea that we're about progress, we're about building, and we're about new ideas and the exploration of that kind of curiosity. And to circle back a little bit on the specific point of what if there's a majority player base, this large faction that's taking advantage of some mechanic that's like unjustifiably enriching this faction or majority of the player base. That doesn't really, I don't think that would exactly exist, because I mean, if you're going to benefit the majority of the player base monetarily, I mean, it won't really benefit anyone, because if the majority is getting a benefit, it's kind of like diluting the benefit, and it's no longer a benefit. It's no longer the viable strategy, because if you have an economy designed around where the decisions of other players have an impact on the outcome of what you're getting, then I mean, this all goes in the depth of economy design. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like obviously there's no way to answer this question right now because we don't know. I'm just asking like hypothetically, it could lead to
maybe, but I mean that's also exciting, because if the entire community wants to stagnate on something, I mean that's history and that's life, and it's kind of replicating a virtual world. I mean, we've seen stages or points in history of real life
I just can't wait for an economic crash in the game because someone was memeing and voted for the wrong one. Yeah, maybe. I mean, as you said, it's like it builds culture. It builds culture.
Yeah, so it's about the culture, and that's why also we have I think an important part of the manifesto or cultivating the community around is that we operate on data and numbers, not our feelings or things like that. Machinations, our economic partner, purely operates on the data, and I think we're going to when it comes to the economy, I think everyone has to understand that proposals and changes are purely on data and for the long-term health of the game. Because if you have short-term gain for a small party, I think they have to understand that short-term game is going to end up destroying their entire play. I mean, the whole ecosystem
would fall.
Yeah, and since we have such powerful Monte Carlo simulations to do these forward-looking projections, we could slam the data in their face, being like, well, I mean, if you do want to do this, it'll take about 3.5 weeks till it all falls apart and we lose everything. But
Yeah. I mean, that question kind of comes back from just games that I've played, like Travian, that has ended up with just massive snowballs due to big factions, and the game always ends in just two big factions just rolling each other. So, I guess in a sense, it's kind of a skewed question. Yeah, sorry, what were we saying, Colin? Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to the not allowing adaptation fact you had. I think the way that the game's marketed, or at least the way that I look at it, right? You know me as a short-term trader, so I never look at anything like long-term. But like when I do look at something long-term, like it's not leaving my wallet for the most part. Like I'm there for the story, and I'm there to see what's going on. And the thing that caught my eye with Citadel is the fact that it's a game built by the community, and you notice a lot of the time with founders of these specific like PvE games, just like Fleet said, the problem is almost always the founder. But when you have a bunch of people working to solve the inherent problem and looking to build on top of the game itself, and that is the way the game is marketed, then I don't think that ever happens.
Yeah, you have a strong basis against it. I mean, the game hasn't even launched, but we've been kind of running in a slightly decentralized state as much as possible, considering, it's just the core team here. But the core team now exists people who were part of the community and just members and joined the server a few months ago, but now they have main roles. I mean, Heimdall and Flam are perfect examples of we've had the idea of community building and letting people who have better, unique talents and or further understanding of certain areas really have a strong hold on the game. Heimdall absolutely obliterated me when it came to economic design and sustainability and just balancing that kind of thing, and really pushed us to do so many incredible things. And now he's part of the team. But that signifies the idea of like anyone can contribute, anyone can build. I mean, Heimdall can speak on that, but the same thing with Flam. And Flam has had a huge contribution to the game himself, and he's just from the community about just DAO structure, the economic balance, long-term planning of how new ideas could work. And I mean, Flam's already written a couple articles that are so eloquent and well written. It's just the impact has been from the community, and their freedom to build has been present from day one. I mean, we read every question, we've read every idea, responded to nearly every single one, and we've made the reason why the game hasn't come out, even though it finished development in December, is we keep, adopting and building new stuff in the community and things that are right. Obviously, I'm not going to say that's the game's never going to come out because we're never going to stop doing that, but it is what it is now because of the community already. And it's going to be very exciting to watch that become the heart of the project, where that is always the case. I mean, that was a ramble, but Heimdall and Flam are from the community and now they're part of the team. And I think that represents what the project is about and how their community contributions shaped things already, and the game hasn't been launched.
As well as Jimmy. We can't forget Jimmy.
And absolutely. Jimmy is the actual legend. I mean, Jimmy's our community manager, but also he's had so many his own unique contributions. And he would have been here in this call, but I think he's sleeping or catching or dealing with some, medical stuff on his own. But
Jimmy is probably like literally everyone on your team has impressed me so far from who I've talked to and who I've listened to, right? And even down to the community manager has impressed me at how well he handles himself and speaks about the project, and just everything is just so impressive every time I speak to one of you guys or fucking get to listen. Sorry for the curse word. It's amazing every time I hear from you guys. But I got some questions from the chat. These ones should be a little bit easier. You're picking, Helly, because I know you like to pick. But
It's alright. I do pick a lot, yeah. You should see me when I pick against Llama. I shit on Llama for anything that he says, just on purpose. Sorry, go on. What's the
always good to have a two sides to a thought,
Yeah.
This is just from community, so some of these will be kind of easy to go through, Commander, or anyone in particular that would like to pick them up. Tony says, will there be a difference between Genesis ships that are minted at launch and the ones that are bought with ore, which I think will be auctioned, correct?
Yeah, auction in the very unique dynamic blind reverse in-game Dutch auction, blah blah. I mean, it's the whole
I
system
think you
behind
could
it.
even talk about that for 15 minutes too, because it
I
makes
I
the
could
game
talk
depth
about it
so
for
low.
hours. But yeah, no, there's no difference in Genesis ships that are minted and those that are made later in the game. Because I think that's just kind of an unfair advantage, and also really skews how you design a sustainable and balanced economy, and also just a balanced game. They already have an advantage by playing the game longer. Their understanding and knowledge of how to play the game is what gives them the benefit. If you minted a Genesis ship, that means you're playing earlier. You're getting an advantage for just playing earlier.
Yeah, so it would just ruin the economics. All right, and then I got
Yeah, I mean,
another one, really easy, but this one's personal. When you plan
go
on
for it.
playing the game, because you guys are all transitioning from founders to builders, correct? As you guys
Correct.
have stated. What strategy do you guys plan on picking for the game?
That's a really funny question. Well, the nice thing is there's so many unique strategies and ways you can play the game. Also depending on the variables and things that are. And I mean, you can't really predict a perfect strategy. There is no one perfect strategy. But personally, I mean, every class has its strengths and weaknesses. But I really like the idea of. And honestly, you're gonna hate this answer. I just want one of everything because I want to do every strategy and play every style, so I can learn more about the game myself through playing. So I'm you're getting the builder strategy where my main focus is playing every angle and avenue of the game possible, so I can build and expand it. So sorry about that, but ask another team member. Maybe they have a better strategy that's actually applicable to playing.
Anyone else? Heimdall? Flamsank?
Yeah, so I'm also going to be taking the builder perspective and testing the abyss for everybody. So I'll be testing the burn mechanism as fast as I can to see how well it works, because it's sort of the basis for the controlling the ship inflation from the auction house. So yeah, so I'll be YOLOing with all my degenerates, you know.
Flamsank?
There you go.
Is he here?
Yeah, he's here.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I mean, I feel like maybe that's the most responsible move as one of the team members is just to make this pilgrimage to the abyss and hit the high score.
But if you guys want some so-called alpha in terms of strategy and or things to keep important when you're thinking about playing the game, fuel costs are insignificant, when traveling, but keep in mind on how much you're traveling. If you're in a region that's a much more active play style and you have a ship that has a higher fuel cost, you likely don't want to be traveling as much because it's really going to hinder your overall, you know, ore haul or income, I guess you can call it for simplicity's sake. So learn to recognize what regions support what play styles and keep in mind the fuel cost associated with each play style and what ships best benefit all those factors taken into account. Frigates are faster, they're less powerful, but they're much more fuel efficient. Command ships are slower, significantly slower, and use a lot more fuel, but they're way more powerful. So think in your head about how you'd want to use those, and then learn to recognize opportunities as they come up, because belts spawn and deplete and things change on how you can best maybe chain strategies together, or chain certain playstyles together, or work with your own time and availability. I mean, it's for the simple iteration of the launch game, you can really get kind of creative with it and how you want to play. Hopefully that didn't scare anybody off with how many things you want to keep into account, but it's simpler than it sounds, trust me.
Personally, I'm not gonna lie, I like being the marauder. I want to steal people's stuff.
Oh yeah, marauding is
I feel
fun.
like it
It's
has the
definitely more
highest skill
skill
cap.
intensive. Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, who knows? I would say so. I mean, a miner can always generate ore. A marauder cannot. Marauders have to steal it, and if you put yourself into an unfavorable position, you're really going to cap your income. So that's you got to think. There's a lot of thinking, a lot of decision making,
All right.
but it's fun. Hopefully,
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea. And then I know that I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna like have like a day with just no yield and.
exactly. But that's how an economy works.
Oh yeah, and you can't always win. Not everyone's gonna win 100% of the time. So glad that's how the game works, because then I can learn to get better at it, and then it's not just some boring stake to win game with no real win. You know.
Yeah, I mean that's not even a game. So
Oh, well,
people in the NFT community have been conditioned
oh,
that
it's a game now in the NFT
blockchain
community.
games blockchain games are a single button with a single strategy that everyone plays exactly the same way. Frictionless rewards.
Frictionless rewards with no liquidity pools. So
Exactly.
just tokens.
Yeah. And the tokens are used to generate more NFTs that generate further tokens to generate more NFTs to generate further tokens
With the button.
with a button.
Don't forget with the button.
Yeah, a single button, nothing else. And then also on top of that, you have the random surprise of a contract exploit to really shake things up. Gotta keep it
I wish I
interesting.
was involved for that. I didn't actually get to see that. This is just like a person. This is outside of the realm of Citadel at this point. But I know you guys have done quite a lot of. Um, I'm looking for the word for it. Contract audits, correct?
Yes.
So you guys have taken a numerous amount of precautions to prevent anything of that sort from happening.
Oh
Within
yeah, I mean
everything.
yeah, I mean it's called hiring security professionals. That's what you do. Obviously, we're not experts in economy design or security. We're I'd like to say experienced developers and experienced game enthusiasts that involve a lot of economy. So we have a really good initial basis. But that's why we delegate and work with these types of professionals to better establish our work and refine it to a degree that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
So one question I wanted to ask you guys when you were in here, this is completely outside of the realm of Citadel as well. I have another question from the community for you guys. Um, but what would you say? As you know, most of us are traders here, right? And most of us look for the best potential long-term to mid-term to short-term return, or just quality in general, right? So for you, have you done any investing into other PDE ecosystems, or have you just been working with your project?
Is the question my thoughts in the NFT space and my
It,
playbook of things I've done in it?
what I was gonna get into is your thoughts at the PDE ecosystem as we are at right now, and what is actually determining a quality game, because so many projects are actually coming out and saying they're a game, but none of them have the aspects that you guys are currently building upon. No one's actually developing anything new, like you guys are actually building a future for your project, and you're also building a future for your project in a way that no one else has ever done realistically. Like no one else has made the community as far implemented into the project as you guys have.
Got it.
So
Definitely.
what do you think currently of the state of NFT PDE games, and what actually is making some of these projects successful? Like Creeps, I guess. Like Creeps was super successful. We talked about them for a while, but that was just because they were providing so much for the short time period that they were. Like they didn't have a long term goal out of it, I could say, in terms
Oh,
of where they
definitely.
were at. They just planned on delivering so much stuff to the point where you just constantly felt like you were doing something, and it was like rewarding because you were constantly doing something. But that's short lived. You can't always
Yeah.
deliver that daily.
No, exactly. Uh, I mean, honestly, the NFT space and especially the P2E space is not great to a certain extent. But that's not to say it's not great because the projects are not good. They're just the good projects are outweighed by the bad, uh, which is, I mean, that's the case of every market. But look for teams. I mean, look for people who want to deliver and are taking their time or not bothered by the ups and downs of the markets and are rushing to be first or to try to mint out. I mean, I would say there's really only
Yeah,
two to three,
literally just you guys right now that I can name.
I mean, I would say EtherOrcs is, hands down without a doubt,
They're impressive.
the
Yeah.
the king of the current space and will be the honorary, you know, king for a long time. One, because their team is incredibly talented and they deliver very consistently, but two, because their core values and philosophies of how they've handled the project from the start to where it is now are incredibly strong. And that's why the community has rallied around them so hard. I mean, you had the community fight the founders to increase the royalties on the project. That's probably the first time that's ever happened in the NFT space. That's quite rare. Um, but you have to look for the teams and the people who are actually building and want to build things because of the tech and the opportunity, not because of the profits or the money behind it or the potential of profit. See, Dogwood is a great example. Those guys are great. Ethorcs are amazing. Uh, I think Ethernal Elves is a new one
They
that's been
did
doing really
very
well,
well.
and I think they're doing a great job and things like that. These are this is a little side note, but I think and something I talked about slightly earlier today in Station Chat with somebody else is I think blockchain game is absolutely the future to a certain extent of a really new type of genre of games. I'm not going to say they're replacing all games because not all games need to be Web3, but it's going to be a very exciting genre and dominant one in the future. But we're definitely still early, if not a little too early for any good, worthwhile AAA blockchain games, as seemingly every project wants to be for some reason. I think it's probably because
It's a
they think
big
there's a lot of money
buzzword.
involved with it, or it sounds
Yeah.
cool. It's a
Yeah.
big buzzword. The harsh reality is most AAA games outside of Web3, meaning just normal AAA games, like absolutely suck. Like majority of the time, like they're just giant, money printers and things like that. Like they're really not good games anymore. Uh, PUBG was not a AAA studio. Now it is, which, guess what? It sucks now. I think most of it, I don't think people really like it anymore. Um, but what I think we are in time for is a little bit of a renaissance of indie blockchain games, which I think is what you can classify as what EtherWorks is, or Dogwood, or Eternal Elves, or what Citadel aims to be. And in my opinion, indie games have always been more fun and you know, exploring new types of ideas and mechanics than majority of the larger games. I mean, it's the argument of big company versus small company. Big company is slow. Google is slow to do things, but then there's constant startups all the time that still get, major valuations and funding, even though the ideas aren't exactly new. It's the way they're doing them, or it's because they're agile. Same thing with indie games. Indie games could really try a lot more new ideas and not be bogged down by will it sell well or does this actually make us money? Does this mechanic incentivize monetization or loot crates? You know, and so I think indie games are really a perfect spot for blockchain gaming, and I don't think anyone's really bothered to do it that much. Like there's literally like three of them to some extent that like look and kind of feel like indie games, which are the ones I've listed out. But I think there's like an insane amount of potential. I mean, I think everyone here's on their computer, and a lot of people who are probably have Steam. The best selling games on Steam are not AAA games, and they never really have been. I mean, they do huge numbers, but they're far in between. But the top sellers are always indie games or new ideas or things like that. Like that's they have the popular game that comes here and there, but like if you look at the global top sellers, like it's always lots of niche kind of things or things like that. I mean, there's just a huge volume in the gaming industry of indie games or smaller games or triple B. I don't even know what the term is for games that aren't AAA, but you know, I think the market taking advantage of, or not taking advantage, looking for the opportunity in indie games and these smaller kind of style blockchain games is truly untapped, and it's incredibly exciting. I mean, I've always loved indie games. Ramble here, but
No, yeah, I feel like this space
it
kind of promotes that energy, you know, like almost anybody can, not anybody can come out with a project and just create an idea out of this, but the space really promotes it right now, I think.
no, definitely. And I mean, most games fail. That's how the gaming industry is. I mean, majority of all games fail. I mean, I'm going to say it's literally probably higher than 50%, and that's probably being considerate. Uh, and now we have people who have no experience or little or, you know, some, or they worked at some company as, you know, a game developer, blah, blah, who are now promising their own huge AAA blockchain game that's going to, you know, revolutionize the gaming or blockchain gaming space,
Like
and
Pixelmon.
asking for a huge, maybe, maybe.
You could say
But
names on here. We say names. We love
oh, I'm
saying
just saying,
names.
Bro, just do it. I don't.
but what I'm pointing at here,
Oh, Colin came in for the throat.
it's not just Pixelmon. It's so many projects that are like Pixelmon, and for some reason the market is so excited about the idea of, yeah, I mean, everyone wants like a major mainstream blockchain game, but the reality is it's gonna take a while. I think the only project that has like an actual opportunity at doing something like that is one that's taken its time to actually build and follow the, you know, proper due diligence of creating a real project, and also not shelling out early on to raise a ton of money and then be like, okay, we'll build it now. And they should build it beforehand. If they want to make a AAA game, they should have the capabilities of making a AAA game before they're, you know, asking for tens of millions of dollars or millions of dollars.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think in a smaller sense, like projects like EtherOrcs and especially Dogewood, which were two you named, despite floors, because it's not always best to look at floors with these type of games, right? Because you're getting quality out of the project as well as everything else that comes along with it, right? You can look at like Dogewood and EtherOrcs staked numbers, and that shows alone how much people are enjoying what they've been provided by the team. Like EtherOrcs has the highest staked rate we've ever seen, and our goal of our project is to get up to EtherOrcs level. Like they have 98% staked, and it just really shows community sentiment. And I think what makes me bullish on you guys is the fact that unlike these other games where they're promising massive rewards and massive short-term promises, you guys are. This also goes off of a question that was asked in the AMA chat. If you guys are reading it, by the way, there's questions in there. I think what makes me so like hyped on you guys and so bullish on everything that you guys are doing is the fact that you guys plan on the long term already. It's been stated from the jump, you know, like the good thing with EtherOrcs and Dogewood in particular is the fact that they've been around for a while and they've had that longevity, unlike these other projects, right? And
Exactly.
you guys are already pushing for that. Like you want the community to mod the project or mod the game and hopefully find a direction for the project that may even be better than your own. You know, like you want everyone to build on top of what was already created just to see what can come out of it. Because then the possibilities are endless for long-term building, you know. What if Citadel in 2 years turns out to be Citadel Gen 2 and there's a whole second game built around the first, you know? Like the
No,
possibilities are
I mean,
endless.
definitely. No, it's really exciting because, I mean, it's planning for long term in a space where the long term is really unpredictable and has always been. I mean, people like to ask the stupid question all the time, what is your 5-year plan, you know, in this space or things like that. And people ask that outside of, you know, Web3 in general. But it's especially stupid in crypto because if you asked anyone 5 years ago what they would have thought crypto looked like now, they would be so wrong. They would be described as like a lunatic. and that's going to stay the same case for quite some time. But what's important to understand is the thing that has stayed around for the last 5 years is the community, is the building, and is the tech and the foundation that has enabled us to get to where we are now. And so if you build that and support it, then you will be here in 5 years. You don't have to know what 5 years is going to look like. You don't have to know what 2 years is going to look like. It's hard to even know what 6 months is going to look like. I mean, look at 6 months ago in the NFT space compared to now, a whole different world. But what matters most is creating the foundation for longevity. And that's why we talk about infrastructure. And so we talk about resources and documentation and tools. And what's really exciting is when you have all of that and you plan for longevity and things like that, you don't have to know what longevity is. So then you could create an ecosystem. An ecosystem in Citadel's sense can be a lot more than just Citadel. I mean, there's no reason why another project can't build within our ecosystem and use the same tools and resources and directly latch on to a certain extent. I mean, look at Treasure DAO. Huge. They've become huge over this kind of idea. Not to say that's what we're planning to do, but the idea is that it's possible because of the foundation. If someone else has a great idea of a project they want to build, I mean, the majority of the mint funds are going to go to the Treasury DAO. There's no reason why Citadel won't fund other great projects and great ideas. It's really a self-governing system. I mean, it's a virtual world to a certain extent. I mean, the cool thing about it is, yes, we can fund building for Citadel. Yes, we can fund building for new art or ships or mechanics and things like that. But we can also fund entirely new ideas that follow these core philosophies and these core ideas. We can fund people. We can fund writers. We can fund all sorts of things that this space needs and envelop it in one kind of healthy, sustainable ecosystem that is more than just the ecosystem within the actual game itself, but it's about the community around it. I think that's what's super exciting. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start one more thing here. If you are looking for good projects and things like that to have a playbook for, if they have a 1 year or 2 year plan, be highly judgmental and be highly skeptical. If someone tells you their 5 year plan, you should walk out. It's not going to happen. It's so important to have a realistic scope of what you're doing. We can talk about the long term with Citadel, but that's because our scope is just the foundation that enables the long term. We're not planning the long term itself. It's important to have a realistic scope and accomplishable goals. That's why roadmaps are such a joke in the community, because they're just littered with, one, fluff or things that don't matter, but two, just completely things that just seem so unrealistic, or nothing that's even like followed before them that gives confidence that they can exist, that it just becomes pointless. I mean, they mean nothing. Avoid stuff like that, and avoid roadmaps that have stuff hidden in them, because I guarantee you, as a founder's perspective, if you look on a roadmap that says the word redacted or eyes as the emoji for something hype that they're not telling you, it's because they don't know what it is, and their plan is to figure it out later, but to give enough speculative hype or copium that you will wait around long enough for them to hopefully figure out the hype next cool thing they can do to keep you around. It's not going to happen. Avoid stuff. Avoid a lack of transparency, and avoid long-term plans. Focus on people who can build and people who deliver, and that's what they do.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, like even if we talk about like games just in general, obviously this is the clearest representation that we can make of it. Like, imagine building the game League of Legends. The game has been constantly rolling out balances since the game launched. One, obviously to make the game fresh and to change up who is playable, but a majority of that is because the game is never 100% balanced. Like there's never like I beat you, you beat me. Like it's just like it's never going to be 100% flat and even.
Oh yeah, I mean it's meta, it's strategy, it's player skill.
Yeah, so then going off of that, Like, imagine having to build out, like, imagine having a 5-year vision of something and also having to do those constant updates over your player, like, over like character management is what I'm trying to get
Oh
at.
yeah,
Like, it seems
I mean,
impossible. So I agree with you
it
100%.
yeah, one, it's impossible even just on a normal project scale. And then if you compound that with the crypto space, you're actually talking about like just it's infinitely impossible. It's not going to happen. Things change here so fast. It's about adaptability. It's about growing and building along with it.
Yeah. Helly, do you have anything to say about the Polygon network? Because I know you guys were having some questions with that. I don't know. Have you guys said what L2 you're going on to?
It's Polygon. Polygon is where all gameplay takes place, and as well
Like,
governance
I
through.
could not unmute. Yeah. Yeah, Polygon's good. It's just cheapish. It's really cheap. That's why we're doing everything on Polygon. So yeah. I mean, there's no way any game ever is on Ethereum. You know. So yeah,
Not
I mean, on layer
cool.
one. On layer one. Yeah, because there's just no shot. Sustainability wise. I mean, it's good. It's a necessity in a way. So yeah. Someone's actually got a question here in chat. Someone's saying, I'm curious, will all decisions slash proposal or proposed slash proposed developments in regards to the game proposed in the DAO, or will there be ownership and decisions by the project leader? As in, what warrants a decision to be processed to a DAO or the team make that decision? So I think that I'm just asking, are all decisions going to be made by the DAO, or is it going to be the team's weight on some of them? And how is that separated? Is the question.
Got it. I mean, a good way to think about us is under the idea and theory of DAO structure called working groups. And you can imagine, working group is just an idea of replacing all different kind of departments that a normal typical organization has, such as HR or marketing, development, sales, blah, blah, blah. So imagine a DAO, but there's a working group and, community around each working group for people who want to do that sort of thing or contribute. A good way to think of us as the core team is that we're just a working group to a certain extent under the DAO. And so we're also just contributing to it. So that means all decisions or things like that, or upgrades to the contracts and whatnot, that is through the DAO. But you can delegate votes to anyone in the community that you feel is trustworthy or that you like their decision making and you want to, place your vote of governance in their hands. That's easy. That's very simple to do through the interface. So that means you don't have to be constantly concerned about participating or concerning with, DAO proposals, or that you won't fit into the project if you just want to play and hang out with the community and do community things and things like that. But also, building is like maybe not exactly, you could delegate your vote to someone that you do trust. So for example, if people really liked us, for example, they could delegate their votes to us. And that in that sense, that can speed up maybe more proposals made by the core team and things like that. But we still need to vote to succeed, even if it's our own change or proposal that we're making to the DAO. So that, yeah, everything has to go through the DAO and has to meet the proper approval. Hopefully that answers the question.
And yeah, I think I answered the question. I think if they have any questions, they can just add on. Yeah, it said it does. So yeah, thanks for that.
This one, ready? This question, this was basically what I was asking. King Tut says, are you not concerned about Polygon's ability to handle a game considering what has happened to Cool Pets, especially with CyberKongz coming on to Polygon, I believe, as well? Why not work on your own L2? I just was wondering about Polygon just in general.
No, definitely. So just a quick side note on why not work on our own L2. It's the same reason why you hire or work with professionals like a team or company like Versal for machinations or facility finance for security audits, because time is a finite resource and building takes a significant amount of time. If you want a project like ours to exist, we also can't be the same people who built an entire L2 solution to support it. Nonetheless, the fact that Polygon is a very mature network and the security of all these L2s come from already some form of decentralization plus, consensus. I mean, Polygon is a huge network that is very successful. People have got a lot of a shifted point of view recently with Polygon, and that honestly, the thing you said, which is why not make your own L2, has been thrown. That idea has been thrown around a lot, but like, I think people understand that for a network or for an L2, you need a lot of validators, and you can't get that quickly to handle the network or transactions, things like that. Nobody can. It's impossible. That's not a feasible thing to do. And one, it wouldn't be a good idea because you'd be prone to centralization and you'd be sacrificing security on such a large scale, where it's just a terrible idea. That is the point of Polygon. They are an entire project focused around this idea, like how we're an entire project focused around an on-chain game. But anyways, to talk about Polygon, we're very confident. We really have no major concerns with Polygon. I mean, like I said, it's a very mature network. Majority of all the other issues that projects are talking about, for Coolcans, for example, are more along the lines of maybe an inexperience with L2s and scaling, or a lack of proper setup for their game state on Polygon and things like that. Because if there really was significant issues with Polygon, EthOrcs wouldn't be thriving, Thermal Elves wouldn't be thriving, and things like that. Like if Polygon was an issue, you'd see a lot bigger concerns within crypto as a whole, outside of your favorite on-chain game or project that's talking about how they're going to move to L2. Because Polygon has a lot more than just on-chain games, and if there was disturbance in that network, you would feel it. Which is why when they're down, you could feel it. But I mean, from what we can tell, I mean, like, the common issues that get kind of brought up with Polygon, you hear things a lot about bridging issues, where you're bridging from L1 to L2, and this is entirely mostly on the project side and not the Polygon side. I mean, a lot of modern projects were basically having some recent issues with the FX portal library, and that's kind of, a common choice of creating a bridging system, because it wasn't really originally designed to scale or work with like the facility version that a lot of projects are like tackling to. But to summarize that, I mean, the bridging stuff that's project side. So projects that talk about issues with bridging, that's on them, not Polygon. Besides that, you have RPC issues, and that's usually just because, MetaMask's default RPC and the Polygon, they're overwhelmed to a certain extent. But there's so many different RPCs you can use. You can pay for better services and things like that to kind of direct your project's traffic through, its separate RPC service that has like better reliability. It's like using the free tier of like some software when you could upgrade to a more secure, reliable version. It costs money. It's not really that much, but like most people just don't do it because they aren't aware of it. And usually, some of the stuff that's talked about is like slow transaction processing issues, and that's related to the same thing with the RPC. So if you have a better RPC, you're going to have a better time handling transactions and less slow issues there. Polygon, I mean, one more thing to add. I mean, people are like, oh, Polygon's unstable, Polygon goes down. Polygon has like a 99.9% uptime. The recent downtime was scheduled in advance as maintenance and announced beforehand. It really just got blown out of proportion because there's a lot more talk around Polygon in the NFT space, and a really popular thing in the NFT space is a lack of education and people not bothering to do research and rather just reading tweet headlines and things like that and then regurgitating that to other people. So it really got out of hand quick, but it was really not an issue. I mean, if you want to look for real Polygon issues, watch EthOrcs announcements or Dogwood announcements, things like that, because they'll be the first to let you know.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. I never really thought about it that way because I heard a bunch of people talking about the issues with Polygon, right? And I never really thought to look at if the other successful projects that were built on the network were having the same like major issues and not necessarily complaining about it, but like being considered a core flaw within their project, you know? Like, oh, we need to switch off of here now because there's so much downtime, or the game's unplayable because there's so much downtime. So I never really thought to look at the other projects that were on there and
having no issues.
and the issues that they were having.
Yeah.
So that does make much more sense.
Polygon is a very it's a great option for L2 and things like that. Obviously, you have the argument or conversation maybe around Avalanche being a better alternative, but they are less mature. They're a newer network. Who's to say they won't run into the same issues as they scale to the level that Polygon is now? It's kind of the same idea where people talk about, this new cryptocurrency, outside of Ethereum. It's not Ethereum, it's a whole new one. Has 10,000 times faster transactions and 10,000 times cheaper transactions, but it's also 1/1 millionth the scale of Ethereum. And the reason Ethereum is so important and has a huge place in crypto as a whole is because it's scaled and it handles more than any other network. Combined to a certain extent. It's so different, and people really fail to grasp at scale. If you think your new token or crypto is the next Ethereum, wait till it gets to Ethereum's size, or even 1/100th of it, and then come back and see what happens.
Or it implodes.
Yeah, or you have Solana where it gets paused by the CEO, which is hilarious.
I don't even keep up with any other coins than ETH, to be honest. I feel like it's probably a bad idea, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't follow anything.
It's literally just and then obviously there are Polygon, right? And then the small coins that come with NFT price, but I'm not informed.
Yeah, like 90%, 95% of my net worth is in ETH, so I do check out for it often. But yeah,
definitely. Any other questions or hard points you guys want to bring up? Community stuff, anything in general.
In my eyes, you guys knocked it out of the park. Like any question that was asked was answered thoroughly to the point where everyone understands, and at the same time, you also were able to hit on. There's so many things within your ecosystem that you can go so far into that it can be a whole AMA in its own, or like a whole hour talk in its own, and a whole conversation on. But for the most part, like any question, like I couldn't see someone walking away from this and saying, "Wow, like I'm confused," because you guys have always done such an amazing job with explaining things.
It's important to explain things,
especially when you have a mechanism
understandable fashion.
Especially when you have a mechanism to burn.
Yeah.
How at like say percentage wise, how many people do you think won't read the roadmap on the day of launch, and just like end up burning their ship within like a week?
I'd say honestly a small percentage, because it's a good good point to raise of who won't read the yellow paper and understand that there's risks, but also it's like playing any other video game and standing at the edge of a cliff and being like, well, if they don't know the cliff, if you jump off it, they're gonna die. They haven't read the manual that comes in the video game case. How are they gonna know the cliff is gonna kill them if they jump off it, or that they can't swim? Like they know this thing. Well, they know this thing because of the interface. They know this thing because the interface makes it clear and simple to understand. In the same way that we try to break down and simplify our answers so that everyone can understand them, the interface does that on a greater scale, where if you're going to take the risky option, it'll be quite apparent that it's the risky option, and the risks associated will be clear. So if they don't want to read the text in front of them, yeah, maybe they're going to end up burning the ship, but they're still like low odds. So maybe they'll do that and be like, wow, I got so much more ore this time, and then go flex to their friends in the community, and then they'll be like, damn, you're brave. I would never do that. And they're like, wait, what do you mean? So
you just
we'll see.
raced the 1 ETH ship, dude. What are you doing? For a minute gain.
Yeah, on a bad belt, you took the risky option on a belt that wasn't even worth it, or with
So there's
just a
seven
bad
belts.
setup.
7 belts, right? Or like
Oh
six.
no, there's 5 regions. Each region has unique uh, belt characteristics in terms of capacity or density, spawn times, and play styles. And then within that, I think there's about 8 different ore types. Heimdall, you can correct me.
I did not know that. Wow.
So that means each belt can have depending on the region, different types of ores within it that have different levels of density or like percentages of, the composition, uh, the general capacity, meaning how long it's going to, be around based off how many people are there mining it. And then, within the regions, that's where you get into the details of like the taxes for that belt or the taxes for that region or the risky options for that, things like that. So if you, for example, region one, just the frontier, which is where everyone starts, you can consider that the beginning area or the starting area. So the belts are very large in capacity, meaning they'll probably last for a few days with supporting a lot of players mining there. But they'll be kind of like infrequent because you don't need a ton of belts there. So it's kind of a slower, more passive play style. But how that is countered is those belts are lower in ore value because they contain a lower value ore type and things like that, and different those types of densities. And so if you want to be a passive player, it's totally a good decision to go play in, region one, because you can make one decision every 3 or 4 days and do pretty good. Obviously, if you want to, be way more active and make a decision every 30 minutes or an hour, you probably want to go to the fourth region, which has significantly smaller capacity belts, meaning they last maybe only a few hours, depending on the players there. But they have significantly higher ore values and a higher chance for unique types of ore types to spawn within those belts. But with that comes the increased associated risk if you want to take the risky option. And to balance that, that's where you have the high taxes. So it really comes down every belt is a new situation, and it spawns in a different location, and it's always going to be a different play. Obviously, you may start to recognize patterns. You may start to recognize some strategies that form how you want to play or handle certain belts. I mean, it's like any other game. And so you'll get a better grasp of how you want to approach a situation at a glance over time, but maybe at the beginning you'll spend a few minutes thinking about it.
That makes the game so much more complex. I thought there was only eight different like specific mining locations. I didn't
Oh
know
no.
that you'd be able to move within each mining location.
Yeah, that's the point of the real-time player positioning is you actually can see your ship when you're in playing the game, travel across the map, I bet slowly, depending on what you're doing. But you'll see your ship moving across the map as it travels, and that's happening on chain, which is cool. Um, and with that, when you reach out a belt, these belts have different types of ore densities for the types. And so that doesn't mean like, oh, I'm going to go sit at this 10 times belt and mine it because I want to get, 10 times rewards. Like you might, if it has, a higher density of a 10 times multiplier, like ore type, but you're not guaranteed that. I mean, when you stop mining at a belt, you receive a single type of ore, meaning, for example, you spent 6 hours mining at, belt A, and belt A has a 50% density of ore type that has like a 100% multiplier, which just means, one. 25% chance or density of multiplier whatever that has 200%, which is just two, and then maybe a few smaller of 3 and 4. So you have a 50% chance when you stop mining that your entire 6 hours of mining is going to be rewarded with 6 hours with the mining time for 100, the initial ore type, that 50%, which is just one token, right? Things like that. But you can get luckier or hit a rare ore density pocket, and then you could get 6 hours worth of like the 4 times or the 2 times, or that's very that's what's exciting, it's profitable, things like that. I mean, not the best explanation because it's that was kind of a little maybe overcomplicated and not super clear, but
Yeah, it just seems more like you're trading time for risk, pretty much.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
the value proposition. Like you mine it for less time, but sure you mine it for less time, and you get the 4x, but you're also mining it for less time with way more inherent risk. You know,
definitely. And that there's a strategy people may not realize. In the same way of dollar cost averaging their investments, where they spend the same amount every month on a stock or Ethereum, because when you stop mining, you lift your drills, you get a single type of ore. Maybe instead of sitting there for 6 hours at a belt and then pulling out the end, if you want to be safer and get a more average, rounded out ore haul, you stop mining once an hour and then start again. So that instead of at 6 hours, the risk of I either get 6 hours of a really good ore or maybe not so good one, you can average out in between and get a more proportionate haul. It's not going to be as high as it could have been, but it won't be as low as it could have been. It'll be in the middle. I mean, that's how averages work. And so, like, there's a layer strategy right there that people may not have realized is how often do you want to stop mining and restart your mining to maybe secure your level of income, I suppose. Do you want to risk it all for 10 hours on a belt, hoping that you get a 10% chance at claiming 10 hours worth of a 8 times multiplier? Or do you want to split it up and hope that you get some good ones, maybe some bad ones, and end up with a more averaged out haul? It's your decision.
now I'm thinking. You got me thinking. I don't know what I want to do now.
That's the point of the game. You got a lot to think. And again, to reiterate, this may sound more complicated because keep in mind you're listening to a voice over a Discord instead of
Yeah, instead
actually
of
playing
actually
the game.
looking at a UI and seeing what you can
Exactly.
do. So it sounds a lot
Like,
more, but like you also have to like comprehend what you're doing before you go
yeah,
into
I
it
mean,
because that's how the game works.
imagine some guy explaining, playing Elden Ring and fighting a boss, and how fucking complicated and ridiculous that would sound about all the different move types, how fast he is, the dodging, the different equipment, types of damage he's dealing. It'd be overwhelming.
Great
But
game,
when
by
you
the way.
play Elden Ring, oh, amazing. But when you play Elden Ring, it's still super hard, but you know what's happening. You can play and you adapt and you understand.
Unless
There's a
you're
difference
playing
between,
Mage.
yeah,
No, there is no adapting. It's press button, die.
yeah, easy mode. But I just wanted to reiterate. So don't be scared off if I'm throwing out so many levels of
You
depth and
just suck at the
mechanic
game,
here.
Colin.
Oh yeah, here you come. Here you come. Throwing hate.
But I was just
I'm probably the best player I've ever met, at Elden Ring, and I've only ever met a player. Somebody's saying that there's no way, like there's no inherent risk for marauders, but the inherent risk for, like, this is me answering the question kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong. The inherent risk of marauders and marauders not having a burn method is the fact that if they're sitting out there doing nothing, then they're earning nothing. Like you have to play the game to earn.
Yeah,
Correct?
I mean exactly. It's kind of what I said earlier. Like a mining ship can always generate ore by going to a belt, but a marauding ship can't. Like it has to play correctly. I mean, it's not available that you can just always generate ore. As a marauder, you have to make calculated decisions. So marauders, yes, at the initial, iteration of the launch, they don't have a burn risk, but they have risk via opportunity cost, which is, more so about how they play, how they try to optimize, their strategies, what belts they go to, depending on the types of players that are there. What it's if a marauder sits and does nothing, it'll gain nothing. And yeah, a miner will do that too, but it's a lot easier for a miner to make ore. But the main thing to take away is, yeah, they have no burn risk, but they don't contribute to inflation in the economy, and they're pitted against themselves in a sense where when you're roaming at a belt as a marauder, the tokens or ore that you're receiving is a proportionate share of the, call it, strength or gunpowder of your marauder compared, in a ratio to the other marauders there. And so they essentially kind of fight each other for, a slice or, a cut of the overall ore pie, I guess you can call it at a belt, which is nice because like I said, they don't contribute to inflation in the economy. They're not a inflationary chip or mechanic, which gives us a long runway and enough leeway to create and spend time developing a more robust game, in a sense, through new mechanics or some new ideas, where that we can create an actually unique and detailed, in-depth approach to how we want to handle risk on the Marauder part. Marauders, the game is not going to be the same game forever. I mean, what the game is going to look like in a month after launch is very different from what it looked like on launch. So now imagine 2 months or 3 months. Marauders are not always just going to be, roaming out of belt. Talk about adding PvE or, fighting some NPCs or things like that, or, doing some missions or other things like that, or who knows, even PvP. I mean, there's a lot of chance for risk down the line. So it's very important to understand that, they're an important part of the game at the moment, but what's more important is handling a sustainable economy around them, which is what we have done. But now if you introduce them being burned and you do it with haste, with a bad system and a bad design, you're going to really end up harming the project as a whole in the long-term availability of it or sustainability of it. And so they will have their time in the sun, but it's not at launch. But that means you guys or anyone in the community gets to help contribute to what maybe that looks like, or maybe they get to build it themselves, or just contribute to the overall idea and workshopping of how risk for Marauders is handled in the burn sense, but they still have risk via opportunity cost and having a higher skill cap than miners do.
Yes, but technically no, inherent risk other than playability reasons. Obviously, skill-wise, skill is risk for the most part.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers your question, Bear. Very deep explanation.
I wanted to add a little note to the Marauder class type. Yeah, I think it's interesting to consider, where these on-chain games came from, and a lot of the clones that spawned off of Wolf Game, for example. But it's always kind of this dynamic between two different types of NFTs. And when we started to come up, or when FleetCommander and Architect and them, and all of us came together to kind of decide how these two ship types would interact, we were looking at the old models and we were seeing the wolf gets to steal the sheep. It doesn't really, there's no economic benefit to that, because it just always kind of incentivizes this. The wolves are always getting richer, and the sheeps are not really getting much out of that. So I mean, the difference here is that the mining ships get burnt; they don't get stolen by the marauders, which I think would actually just be an overall unfair mechanic and not healthy for the economy at all. Whereas now we have this sort of economic benefit. If a mining ship decides to take risk and gets burnt, it's an economic benefit for everyone, right? Because you're decreasing generation, and you're also increasing scarcity of ships in general. So overall, I think it's just a much more healthy mechanic. And like FleetCommander said, we're definitely looking at ways that we can, incentivize marauders to possibly take risky options in the future.
Definitely.
It's got a two-factor, like a double-edged sword to it almost. So very smart. But I don't see how you'd ever make a risk for marauders. How would you do that other than fuel? Probably just fuel.
I mean, this is off the top of my head here, so don't take this as exact confirmation.
Yeah.
But in terms of ideas, I mean, you talk about implementing ship equipment and types of ship modules where you
defense.
Maybe, but more so augment the capabilities and playstyles of what your ship can do or specialize in, and the way those or that equipment or that modules are created is through missions and PvE and things like that. So maybe there becomes a new strategy of how to be profitable as a marauder, but it requires that you have some more in-depth play styles via PvE or some missions or things like that. And then the way you conduct and handle yourself through a mission as a marauder, maybe that's where the risk kicks in. Maybe if you let your ship get all ships have hit points, they're not used in the current iteration of the game, but there can be damage and critical hits and things like that, who knows in the future. You could easily add risk through a sense of missions and PvE and combat with some AI and things like that, to where the reward at the end of that is equipment or things that are valuable and deemed valuable by the economy or the market or the players, or that is a very viable, pursuit of playstyle. And then there you go. Now you've kind of, in a really robust, simplified way, you've now incentivized and created a new type of game loop where marauders have now more options besides just roaming at a belt. But if they want to maybe be really good at roaming at a belt or kind of access these new areas of gameplay, these new types of avenues of profit making or generation and things like that, there's new types of content for them to explore. But that content maybe has risks and things like that. But that content also is valuable to the entire economy, such as miners and things like that. So maybe they can sell the equipment they get to the in-game, marketplace and things like that. It's all about finding ways to wrap everything together into, it's like any other game, shifting metas, new strategies, new mechanics, new content.
Yeah, keeping everything fresh to an extent.
Yeah, exactly. You could even get as simple as like an unstable weapon system that like maybe makes your gunpowder like 8 times as strong, but every time you stake at a belt, there's a 1% chance you explode. That's obviously super simple, but like but there you now have a reason that some players may take an increased activation of gunpowder to get a larger share of ore at a belt for the same reason that marauder or mining ships take the risky option to get more ore as they evade marauders. Marauders are now using a risky option of their own to fight against other marauders and take a large cut, which is, again, the cool thing there is it's non-inflationary. So, you could get really creative with it. That's the whole point of a very in-depth and thorough foundation for these types of things like this, and all the systems that we've created is to allow these types of ideas to exist. Everything I just said there, I just made up off the top of my head. I didn't, a lot of it, I've definitely helped that I've thought about these things maybe to a slight extent, but nothing there I just said was planned or concrete or, specifically in the roadmap of exactly how it's going to work. But that's the point. All those things are possible within the ecosystem, the foundation, and we could build them, but I don't doubt that somebody else could as well. And somebody else might have better ideas. So in a 2-minute, how do you add risk in marauders? I guess that's how. In a simple version.
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys have thought about a million things. It's just about what you and the community decides to eventually implement, if there needs to be that inherent risk for being of the other class. Because the problem is,
but that also
it's just about what is what you guys want to go with.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the nice thing about machinations is that maybe you might be scared that marauders don't have a, burn at the moment or some sort of type of, deflationary mechanic like mining ships do. But we've simulated and ran a lot of forward-looking projecting models of the economy in the current game state, and things are quite sustainable and stable if they didn't change, which is important because that means when we do change things, we're not changing things for the sake of saving things or racing against the clock of economic implosion. We're changing things to add new things, build new ideas, and add fun or like new types of mechanics that are, really flesh out the game in new types of ways. So marauders are fine as they are in the current economy because it's sustainable with the current design, how the game works, because we've done a lot of math and we've partnered with machinations to do tens of thousands of simulations of the player base and decision things like that to figure that out. So that means when we do go to add to things and explore and expand the mechanics of how marauding works, we will be able to do so freely. And that's the importance of a strong foundation and a sustainable economy, even at a base level, like how the initial launch of the game will be.
Yeah, as Colin said, you guys have probably thought about a bunch of different stuff, and coming from playing games such as EVE Online, you already have seen some potential things you can adapt into the game. So yeah.
The very nice benefit that we have 20 years of games that have done a lot of these ideas and concepts, and we could
Yeah.
use them as case studies, and they've gone through the trials of fire, figuring out if this is a good idea or a bad idea, what happens when you do it, and we can really base a lot of our foundation off that, which is seemingly not done very often, but it's a very valuable resource.
Sure.
Anyways,
I think we one more question and bring it to a close because we have been running for quite a long time.
yeah,
I think this
let's
has
do
been
it.
very useful to everyone who's listened, and everyone's going to listen to the recording after the fact. So yeah, let's see if there's any more questions, anything to explore.
I think
Just shoot some.
I
And
think
then,
I hit on most of them actually. I went through a lot of the questions.
Yeah.
Fleet, they say you sound like Elon Musk. What do you think?
It's very interesting to hear that, because it's only because it's been said so often, which is strange, but I imagine it's a compliment to a certain extent. I mean, might also be a bad one. I think Elon's got his fair criticism about his speaking mannerisms, but people seem to enjoy it, so that's cool. Thank you, guys.
All right. Question from Bulgarian says, "Why is there no aggressive marketing?"
That's a good question. I personally hate FOMO marketing. I think it's manipulative and overhype, and it's basically the same as overpromising when it comes to marketing and like things like that. And also, I think it's about doing it when at the right time. It's waiting and listening. The best opportunity to market where you don't have to do engagement farming bullshit giveaway,
Yeah,
bug or some,
it's about keeping
no
things
potential
organic.
future. Yeah, it's really about keeping things organic and building a stronger community. When the time is right, we will market, but what's going to be nice about that is we will be able to market with real content, real deliverables, and an actual product instead of marketing with, engagement farming giveaways for bullshit that doesn't matter, which leads to projects selling out and communities having nothing and then developers walking away. I mean, I think FOMO marketing is just disgusting. It's just manipulative, and I don't like it, and I don't think it's not what we stand for, and it doesn't represent what this project is all about.
No, yeah, it's pretty unsustainable in this market. It drives a lot of
Yeah.
unneeded hype towards things that not I don't want to say don't deserve it. I mean, this isn't coming at your project in specific. Just like in general, the projects that do this like FOMO marketing and drive that major level hype, and like I'm sure everyone has something popping into their head right now, whether it's the same project that I'm thinking of or other ones, because there's been countless that have done this. Most of them don't really succeed because they're not actually building anything other than hype.
Yeah, and this is like a small side note, but I think it's really disingenuous to use your or a project to use its following and community to promote other projects that serve no benefit to their own community or their own project besides the sake of growing the following to an extent. Um, it's basically creating an echo chamber of buy this next bullshit project and blah blah over and over again, when a project point of communication like Twitter should be used for project updates and communication and actual content. Instead, it's used as a platform for shilling garbage, and uh, I think it actually kills engagement, and you end up with a community that doesn't care about your tweets or knows that they don't have to because the tweets that are going to come from the account are likely just going to be some garbage bullshit anyways that aren't relevant. But every tweet we've ever sent out has been entirely relevant to Citadel, even though they're infrequent. One, because we don't really care about that stuff right now because we're building the product in the game. But two, when you see stuff from Citadel, like an actual tweet from Citadel, it matters and it's important. I think that's valuable, and I think not considered by projects pretty often.
To an extent, yeah. I think there's
Obviously, that's my opinion.
I think there's good forms of it and bad
Oh
forms.
yeah, there's exactly. No, there's good forms and bad forms. Like, if we did a giveaway and some cool thing with Llamaverse, like that would be an example of like a good form. It's communities that have meshed together to some degree, and it makes sense that that content is being posted and things like that. That is a form of utilizing each other's work in progress and community to grow each other and also to share those projects with people in that community who may not have seen it before. That's a great example. A bad example is like some low tier influencers who partner with like basically every project in existence to
Grow themselves, yeah.
grow themselves and are like slam whitelists down to their community as like a sense of value, when all the projects that they're collabing with that just farm this engagement are like low tier cash grabs, but they don't bother to check because all they care about is getting more whitelists and partnerships with their community, which their community is entrusting this person of you know power or leadership that they are doing what's in their best interest, and what reality is that the leader is doing what's in their personal best interest, which is getting more followers and more customers to buy their garbage and or think that they're getting value. It's vanity. It's nothing.
Yeah, I think that's another buzzword that got passed around too much and looked past. Like, there's a difference between providing whitelist spots and just like providing whitelist spots and actually finding quality projects to partner with that will benefit your community in some way by say like our partnership with Sappy Seals, right? I'm just bringing one out for example. Like, people actually get value out of that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
No, exactly. No, there's good and bad ways to do it,
and
and I
that hype
think
train's over now, probably.
yeah, 90% of the time projects do it in a bad way that's disingenuous and based in manipulative marketing to engagement farm and further encourage sellouts or profits for founders' pockets. Obviously, if this is a whole conversation you can get into, we should probably save it for another time.
Yeah, it's what I would like to call a rabbit hole. That's what we were talking about before you guys came on. Just the space and all of its rabbit holes and people's disingenuity and the desire to look past the reality of the fact that there's a blockchain in front of you and just completely go after the fact that they're here for money, if that makes sense. Like, we're talking about people completely selling out their own community for their own financial gain.
Yeah, that's just,
Seen
I
so
mean,
often.
it's just the common grifter type of person that is plagues every type of marketing community. But yeah, I think we can wrap it up here probably.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that was very useful. When are you guys minting and stuff?
There's no set day right now. It's minting when it's ready. Probably maybe the end of month, but don't expect it. We're not rushing things. And being ready means more than having a playable game on launch, even though that is the current state. It's a lot of that deals with infrastructure, community resources, and documentation. So
Yeah, it makes sense.
it's very close. We're in the home stretch, but we're not assigning dates because dates are a form of, making promises that when we say things, they matter. So we're trying to do our best to stay true to that. But anyways, with that said, I don't know if it's cool with you guys, but it's been a great AMA. I think we've all really enjoyed it. I know I have. Great questions and really fun talking with your community. Since you guys have gotten such a very in-depth look and thorough answers about the project and how it works, I think it's a great opportunity to distribute some like whitelist spots to people who are listening right now, because it further pushes the idea that what matters most is having a community that is educated and engaged with the project. And I imagine people here are likely going to be on the more educated and engaged side because they had this opportunity to listen to everything we said. So that's cool with you guys. We can drop some like 10 spots for whitelist for everyone who's listening here.
That would be great. Let me tell you what. Just give me. If you have any other thoughts, give me a second. I'll just make a roll so I can just do it quickly and then give it to you later. Just pick random people on the spot now because otherwise it takes too long afterwards.
Yeah, of course. I took a picture anyways before I said anything, so I have
Yeah,
people
yeah,
here.
So no one's rushing in. No one's rushing.
Yeah,
I was doing the same thing. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all showing.
We
Fleet,
took
Fleet, you
we-
don't have the chat
we-
open, but they're saying they love you.
I took an actual literal snapshot of everyone who's listening in the audience via my
Did the same last time, but it just took me ages to pick after, so I'm just gonna do it now.
So
Because I'm lazy.
But anyways, thanks for listening, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
no worries, man. No worries.
looking
It
forward
was
to
a
seeing
pleasure.
more of you in the community and things like that, and hopefully we're here often as
Yeah.
well.
Colin, do you want to drop some Twitter stuff?
Do I want to drop some what stuff?
Their Twitter link and their
I
Discord
was
link one last
I
time.
was spamming it the whole podcast. I'm sure all the people in here
Okay,
that have been
beautiful.
with that have seen it. I was chilling it out. I have like a little write up of it that he sent me that I was putting in there for people. Let me go back and get it.
Perfect. I'm just literally dishing out spots and looking at names. I'm just doing it. Oh fuck! I forgot how many I did. Shit. Did you say a 10?
Yeah, 10's fine.
Okay, I haven't done 10 yet. Okay, we're good. I can just always come back to it. Okay, but I'll just get the address and do it later. But yeah, all right. Well, I'll just wrap it up now, I guess. Thanks for your time,
Of course.
guys. And yeah, we'll probably try to schedule another AMA closer to your launch if we have the availability. I think that'd be useful for people.
Sure. Yeah, we can make like a bigger official
Yeah.
one and things like that. But yeah. So
All
this
right,
is a good
well,
time.
guys. See ya.
Coming on, that was amazing.
Of course. See you guys.
Thank you guys.
See ya.
See you guys.